Lately, Claire Sterling's mood had been on the whole quite good. The flurry of meetings at Sterling Holdings was mostly over, freeing up more time to spend with her boyfriend. She'd even indulged a whim and sat in on a rehearsal for the drama club's fairy tale play, getting a taste of the actor's life. She'd even made a new friend in Yvonne Moreau, a freshman whose personality clicked perfectly with hers. Looking back on the past year, despite its ups and downs, things had mostly gone her way. Her relationship with that little fool of hers had grown more harmonious and loving by the day. Claire attributed it all to the good karma she deserved for her newfound commitment to being a better person. Of course, she generously set aside a small portion of the credit for the Bodhisattva at the old stone chapel on Serenity Peak. Therefore, as a show of gratitude, with the arrival of a bright new September, the young heiress of the Sterling family decided to rein in her famously icy temper. For the Bodhisattva's sake, she would cultivate her character and be kind to others. And so, if this were any other time, and some clueless rich kid had the nerve to hit on her, Claire's natural instinct would have been to find a way to handle him by the second attempt. But now, things were slightly different. When she ran into Carter Vance again, and he approached her with that same plastered-on smile and an invitation, Claire simply gave him a passing glance. She repeated her mantra silently, peacefully. Give a Bodhisattva some face. He's just a freshman, after all. He is technically a living being. Then she ignored him completely, walking past him without a second thought. His attempt a failure, Carter Vance was immediately swarmed by his usual posse, who once again cautiously advised him to give up. But Carter remained unfazed. Watching the campus queen's departing figure, the predatory gleam in his eyes only intensified. The ones that are hard to get, he mused. Those are the ones worth having. Then, remembering something, he frowned. For some reason, that fleeting glance from the upperclassman had given him the unnerving sensation of being stared down by a prehistoric beast. He'd almost shivered, but he quickly shook his head, laughing at himself. She's just a pretty woman, that's all. She can't possibly have that kind of presence. I must be imagining things. A privileged upbringing and doting parents had cultivated the arrogant and conceited personality of a second-generation brat. When he saw something he wanted, he had to have it. The third time Carter Vance appeared before Claire Sterling, holding a bouquet of flowers and extending another polite invitation, he was ignored again. But this time, Claire's roommates from room 205 had heard all about it. Quinn Liu, the most well-connected of the group, had even dug up a considerable amount of intel on the persistent freshman, which she shared with the others. He's just a rich kid, Quinn announced. His parents work for the city's Department of Education, and apparently, his grandfather is one of the vice deans here at Berkeley. He was spoiled rotten, a total slacker who just spent his time in money-chasing girls. He only got into Berkeley because of his grandfather's connections. And I heard his reputation is terrible. Back when he was in high school at the Berkeley Prep Academy, he knocked up a few girls. They had to pay and pull strings to make it all go away. He hasn't even been at Berkeley for 2 months, and he's already dated and dumped 5 or 6 freshmen and upperclassmen. The story made the other girls in room 205 frown with disgust. Molly Tang looked at Claire, a little curious. But your temper seems to have gotten a lot better lately, Claire. To be harassed by someone like him, and you still haven't done anything. Claire just smiled serenely, giving the Bodhisattva some face. I'm cultivating my character these days. She thought for a moment, then added, besides, 3 strikes. The same phrase, 3 strikes, could be interpreted very differently by different people. For Claire Sterling, it meant that if there was a 4th time, a certain rich kid wouldn't be leaving in one piece. For Carter Vance, it meant that he had been polite and patient enough to ask her 3 times, and on the 4th, she couldn't keep disrespecting him. Different thoughts, but both were running out of patience. So, when the 4th invitation occurred, the situation finally changed. And this time, it was the rich kid who made the first move. He didn't even get the words out. Seeing the prize he was so sure of about to walk around him, treating him like air just as before, Carter Vance finally snapped. A flash of annoyed cruelty crossed his face. He reached out to grab Claire's wrist. Come on, 4 times, and you won't give me the time of day? That's not right. That single action was the last straw. In that instant, Claire's eyes narrowed. She had tried, for once, to be patient, to cultivate her character for the Bodhisattva's sake. But if someone was determined to court death, then there was nothing left to say. In a flash, before Carter's hand could touch her wrist, it was caught by a slender, pale hand that twisted back, seizing his own wrist. A thumb pressed down hard on the pressure point between his thumb and index finger. A jolt of intense, numbing pain shot up his arm, and Carter almost screamed. Before he could pull away, Claire swept her leg out, striking the back of his knee with lightning speed. Thump! With a heavy sound, the 150-pound body of the rich kid crashed to his knees on the ground. Claire looked down at him, calm and composed. "Who the hell do you think you are?" she said peacefully, "to deserve my time?" With a flick of her wrist, she released his trembling hand. "A small lesson," she added coolly. "Feel free to come back for more." Then she turned, her elegant leather boots shattering the reflection in a campus puddle, and walked away with unruffled grace. Cultivating her character? That was just something she said. If some idiot really wanted to test Claire Sterling's patience, what did face matter? She said she was giving the Bodhisattva face, but if she was annoyed, she'd beat up the Bodhisattva himself. And if she couldn't, she'd have Mr. Joe do it. After Claire left, the rich kid was helped to his feet by his posse, who had been watching in stunned silence. He looked at his hand. It was already red and swollen. His friends, still shaken, tried again. "Carter, man, maybe just let it go." Carter shoved one of them away in a fit of humiliation and rage. "Let go, my ass. I've never lost to a woman in my life." The more he thought about it, the more furious he became. But when he recalled the cold, superior look in her eyes as she stared down at him, an unexpected jolt of fear shot through him. He was rattled. Carter gritted his teeth, his eyes flashing with malice. "Fina, a real man doesn't fight with a woman. You think you're so tough? Let's see how tough your man is." For Claire Sterling, teaching a lesson to some clueless rich kid was a trivial matter. She took care of it and moved on, not thinking it was important enough to mention to her boyfriend. But she didn't go out of her way to hide it, either. The girls in room 205 knew, and Molly told Leon, and so Leo found out from Leon. The next day, while the couple was having lunch together in the dining hall, Leo remembered the story and asked his girlfriend for confirmation. Claire didn't hide a thing, casually giving him a brief summary of what happened. Leo listened, nodding with understanding. "Pathetic," he commented. Claire agreed with a hum, a hint of disappointment in her voice. "I wonder if he'll dare to come back." The rich kid was a jerk, but he wasn't a bad punching bag. Unlike the time she had shoulder-thrown Isabella Zhao, when she'd been worried about bruising her soft, delicate body and had held back 80% of her strength. This guy came from a wealthy family, was well-fed and sturdy. She could hit him without worrying. The couple treated it as a piece of amusing gossip. Neither of them gave it much thought. For Leo, there was absolutely no reason to be jealous or worried. He had 100% trust in his girlfriend and knew that Bertha Sue could easily handle such a small matter on her own. If anything, he felt a little pity for the rich kid. Of all the people to pick a fight with, he had to choose his Claire. That was just asking for a death sentence. Hadn't he seen how Wyatt Way, a guy with a top-tier family background and personal qualifications, kept his distance from the Sterling heiress, still trying to get his hands on a couple of her rescue cards for self-preservation? After lunch at the old campus dining hall, Claire took the campus shuttle to the new campus for her afternoon classes. The long-distance relationship of the lethal and savage couple continued this semester. After seeing his girlfriend off, Leo, who had no classes, took a walk around campus, mulling over work matters. As he walked, his feet habitually led him to the old faculty housing area, the quiet little garden, the familiar old man sitting in the gazebo. He was sitting alone, staring at a game board, looking bored out of his mind, as if he'd been waiting for ages. When he saw Leo, his eyes lit up, and he waved frantically. "Kid, what took you so long? Come on, play a couple of games with me. I figured out a new killing move yesterday. I guarantee I'll wipe the floor with you." Leo couldn't help but laugh. "Maybe we should skip it, Gramps. I feel bad beating you like this every day." Leo Hammer Wallace was, after all, a kind person who respected his elders. The next second, the old man was huffing, his beard bristling. "What? Scared you'll lose? If you're a coward, just say it." Leo immediately rolled up his sleeves and sat down at the board with a menacing air. "Who's a coward? The coward's a grandson. Come on, if I don't make you cry today, you can spell my name backward." They battled fiercely over the board. Usually, when the old man and the young man played, they focused solely on the game, with little idle chatter. But this time was an exception. As he placed a black piece, the old man seemed moved, speaking with a heavy heart. "Life is like a game board. Some want to advance, others want to stand still. I'm old. Back when I was full of vigor, placing my pieces across the board, I was often reckless and careless. Looking back now, the regrets are hard to mend. You're still young, kid. Your moves are bold and aggressive, but don't let winning be your only focus. You must be steady. Watch every step you take." The words seemed to carry the weight and wisdom of decades of experience, and Leo felt a flicker of understanding. The old man rose leisurely, clasped his hands behind his back, and slowly walked away, leaving the game unfinished. Wait, unfinished? Leo suddenly realized what had happened, and his eyes widened. Old man, the game's not over. You can't just drop some philosophical bullshit and run away when you're losing. Experience, it seemed, really did come with age. He couldn't win a game, but he was damn fast at running away. Leo sighed, but he didn't mind. He cleaned up the game board and left the gazebo. The afternoon was still young. He wandered around campus for a while longer, and when he passed the school gym, he felt a sudden urge to get a workout in. Last semester, he and his roommates used to come here all the time. Over the summer, the gym had added a lot of new equipment, even a boxing ring. There weren't many people here this afternoon. Leo warmed up on a treadmill in the corner for a bit. Then he found a punching bag, took off his jacket, and started practicing the combat techniques Mr. Joe had drilled into him over winter break. Over the past 6 months, no matter how busy he was with work or school, he'd never skipped his workout routine. You never knew when you might need it. And even if he didn't, it was essential to have a good physique for sparring with Comrade Bertha Sue. Yes, it's exactly the kind of sparring you're thinking of. Let your mind wander. He was drenched in sweat. Feeling like he'd done enough for the day, Leo picked up his jacket to leave. Just as he was about to go, he heard a voice from behind him. Hey, upperclassman. Leo turned to see a handsome, though somewhat effeminate, guy walking toward him. The guy stood by the boxing ring, casually tapping the ropes, and smiled. What's the fun in hitting a bag? I know some taekwondo. Interested in a little sparring. Leo looked him over and nodded politely. No, thanks. You should find someone else. He'd been trained in military combat techniques by a retired Special Forces veteran, along with the fundamentals of Baji Quan. That stuff was forged in real combat. In a casual sparring match, Leo, not yet a master, might not be able to control his strength. Someone could easily get hurt. The guy just laughed, unconcerned. All right, but there's something else. He changed the subject, a grin spreading across his face. Actually, I'm quite interested in your girlfriend. I was wondering if you'd be willing to part with her, lend her to me for a while. Leo paused. He looked the guy over again, more carefully this time, noticing the bruise on the back of his right hand. He recalled what his girlfriend had told him the day before and put 2 and 2 together. But he wasn't angry. He just smiled and offered a piece of well-intentioned advice. Didn't your mother ever teach you not to objectify women? Girlfriends aren't something you can just borrow. He turned to leave, but Carter Vance's lazy, provocative voice followed him. Fine, don't lend her to me. I'm interested in your woman anyway. I'll find a way to get her. The ice queen of campus, right? Carter Vance loves a challenge. She puts on such a cold act. When I get her into my bed, I like to see if she can still keep it up. Leo finally stopped walking. He shook his head, tossed his jacket aside, and muttered to himself, You just had to ask for a beating, didn't you? Seeing Leo's reaction, a triumphant look flashed in Carter's eyes. This was exactly what he wanted, to provoke him. He'd been practicing taekwondo for 2 years. Losing to Claire Sterling the other day was just a moment of carelessness. A real man doesn't fight with a woman. Today, he would settle the score with this Leo Wallace guy. He confidently struck a pose, looked at Leo, and smirked. Upperclassmen, fists and feet don't have eyes. Don't blame me if I accidentally. The words died in his throat. With a sudden, sharp screech of sneakers on the floor, Carter's pupils contracted as he saw the figure in front of him explode forward, lunging at him like a lightning bolt. He didn't have time to react. Carter instinctively raised his leg for a taekwondo side kick, but before he could even execute the move, his calf was seized by a hand like an iron clamp. Leo yanked upward, and Carter's center of gravity vanished. His whole body was lifted into the air. In the same motion, Leo's other hand shot out, grabbing his ankle. With a powerful shove, he slammed Carter down, back first, onto the floor. Thud! The heavy, sickening impact made several other students in the gym turn their heads in shock. A wave of intense pain radiated from Carter's back, spreading through his entire body. Humiliated and furious, he struggled to get up, a curse spilling from his lips. You mother... The last word was still caught in his teeth when Leo was on him again, one hand clamping around his throat, choking the word back down. With a surge of strength, he pushed forward, driving Carter backward, knocking over a punching bag and a barbell rack until he slammed him hard against the gym wall. From start to finish, Carter couldn't land a single effective blow. His 2 years of flashy taekwondo were useless against a combination of military combat and traditional martial arts. The whole gym was in an uproar. Stunned gazes were fixed on them. Leo's hand, like a vice, remained clamped on his throat. Looking at the struggling, writhing Carter, he spoke calmly. Your mother didn't teach you, so I will. If you like to run your mouth, a good beating will fix it. As he finished speaking, he let go. As Carter clutched his throat, gasping for air and looking up to spit out another threat. Leo's final hook swing, carrying the muffled impact of a heavy bag, sent the twice-beaten-in-3 days rich kid crashing back to the floor. The mirrors along the gym wall reflected his contorted, pained face. Leo shook his hand. He picked up his jacket from the floor. He stepped right over Carter's body and, under the shocked stares of everyone in the room, walked calmly away. From start to finish, his breathing was steady, perfectly composed. Tomorrow, the third beating, the resolution of the incident, and tying up a small loose end. Perfect. Daily request for boosts and gifts. A rich kid, spoiled and coddled his whole life. 2 years of half-assed martial arts. Unwilling to endure hardship, only learning the flashy moves. He had no real skill. But when it came to tattling, he was number one. The first time, he'd taken a loss from Claire Sterling, but he'd kept it quiet, too embarrassed to admit he'd been beaten by a woman. This second time, getting beaten by Leo Wallace, he couldn't stomach it. The incident happened on Wednesday evening. By Thursday morning, a storm was brewing. Before his morning class was even over, Leo was summoned to the university's administrative office. As soon as he walked in, he saw Carter Vance standing with a middle-aged woman. The woman, in her late 40s, was impeccably dressed and wore glasses, exuding the arrogant air of a self-important official. Her shrill voice was raised, echoing through the office. Look at what they've done to my Carter. Is this how Berkeley educates its students? Condoning assault in broad daylight? What has this place become? This matter requires an explanation. Then she saw Leo walk in, and her anger flared. She pointed a finger at him, stabbing the air. You're Leo Wallace, right? Who gave you the nerve to bully my Carter like this? I'm telling you, an apology won't cut it. A degenerate student like you must be expelled. A middle-aged male administrator at the office frowned at Leo. Leo Wallace, is that right? Would you care to explain what happened? If there's been a misunderstanding, now is the time to clear it up. Faced with a stern inquiry, Leo just smiled, still perfectly calm. No misunderstanding. I hit him. Hearing Leo's admission, Carter's mother's voice shot up again, even sharper and more intense. Did you hear that? He admitted it himself. He's the one who hit our Carter. Professor Zhou, what more is there to say? Expel him. He must be expelled. The vice dean's grandson was assaulted at his own university. Where does that leave my father's reputation? Where does that leave Berkeley's reputation? The office was filled with the woman's shrill, furious screaming. Later, after leaving the administrative office, they stood in the hallway. Alone now, Carter Vance clutched his still-swollen right cheek and the bandaged bridge of his nose, his eyes filled with undisguised malice and glee. So what if he can fight? I'm going to make sure you can't survive at Berkeley ever again. Leo smiled back. I know you're anxious, but I suggest you don't be. The news spread like wildfire. Within half a day, it had flown across most of the campus. Even students at the new campus had heard about the fight in the gym. The victim, it was rumored, was the grandson of one of the university's vice deans. Berkeley's students gossiped, and those who didn't know the full story felt a premature sense of pity for the aggressor. He messed with the wrong person. This won't end well. Those who knew the truth, that it was their campus legend protecting his girlfriend and teaching a rich brat a lesson, were filled with understanding and righteous indignation, but also deep concern. Even Isabella Zhao, who was usually lost in her own world of work and tending to her virtual farm, heard about it. She even heard the name of the protagonist, Leo Wallace. The name registered for a second before she tossed it aside. Who's that? Never heard of him. Has nothing to do with me. But later, while giving her boss a work report over the phone, she brought it up as a piece of idle gossip. Boss, did you hear what happened over on the old campus? This guy named Leo Wallace apparently stood up for his girlfriend and pissed off someone important. He's in deep trouble. On the other end of the line, the response was calm and detached. Less gossip, more work. It's not a big deal. When talking to his roommates and classmates, Leo said the same thing. But while he wasn't worried, the guys in room 520, Marco Shaw, Dylan, and Leon, were about to lose their minds. They'd heard their roommate was facing severe punishment, a formal reprimand at the very least. The three of them were ready to storm the administrative office and give the faculty a piece of their mind. Their classmates were equally fired up, wanting to argue their case, but their advisor, Alex, managed to calm them down. Then Alex went to the administrative office himself. He reportedly argued on Leo's behalf for a full half hour. He returned with a grave expression, sighing as he clapped Leo on the shoulder. I said everything I could. I don't have much influence, so I don't know how much it'll help. Leo smiled gratefully. It's fine, Alex. The truth will come out. Compared to the concern from his advisor and roommates, his girlfriend, Claire Sterling, was just as unbothered as he was when she heard the news. "So you hit him. What's the big deal?" she said, a hint of regret in her voice. "I should have hit him harder that time. You got off easy." Leo just laughed, placing a chicken leg on her plate. "It's fine. Whether you hit him or I hit him, it's the same thing." Claire nodded in agreement, then looked at him. "Don't worry. A vice dean at Berkeley and a couple of parents from the Department of Education. They're nobodies. I'll call Charles Sterling later." Leo waved his hand. "No need." Meeting his girlfriend's questioning gaze, he replied with the same casual confidence she had shown. "Like you said, a vice dean at Berkeley and a couple of parents from the Department of Education. They're nobodies." No one expected the storm to take another turn, and no one expected it to happen so quickly. That night, an article titled "Spoiled Rich Kid Runs Rampant at Berkeley" was uploaded to the Berkeley discussion board on Happy Nest. Perhaps by a fortunate coincidence, the website's algorithm automatically flagged it, pushing it to the top of the feed for all Berkeley student users. The article, complete with photos and detailed accounts, chronicled the various misdeeds of a certain unnamed, Carter-surnamed rich kid, from his time at the prep academy to his short time at the university. It detailed the harm he had caused to more than a dozen female students, high school and college alike, and the extensive cover-ups orchestrated by his parents and relatives. It was exhaustive and vivid. The moment it was posted, the Berkeley discussion board exploded. Likes and comments skyrocketed. Several past victims even came forward to voice their support and add their own testimony. Then, due to the sudden surge in popularity, the article was, by Happy Nest's fair and reasonable algorithm, pushed to the public discussion board. Its exposure began to increase exponentially. By the next morning, it wasn't just Berkeley. The story of the infamous Carter Vance had spread to nearly every college campus in the Bay Area. And it didn't stop there. With Happy Nest now dominating nearly half the social media landscape in the country, its trending topics were closely monitored by other websites and media outlets, who quickly reposted the story. And then, it was all over the internet. Never underestimate the power of public opinion. When what seemed like a trivial matter was thrust under the glaring spotlight of public scrutiny, the article went viral. A tidal wave of condemnation threatened to drown the name Carter Vance. The family and connections behind him were also dragged out by netizens, who demanded answers. What kind of parents raise a monster like this? How many dirty secrets have they covered up while cleaning up his messes? The backlash was far greater than any of the participants could have imagined. They were caught completely off guard, panicked and furious. Carter Vance, who just the day before had been strutting around the Berkeley campus, didn't dare show his face. He was reportedly ordered home by his family and told to lie low for the foreseeable future. His parents, especially his mother who had been so imperious in the administrative office, were now a mess of anger and fear. They had no time to settle scores with the person who had beaten their son. They were desperately trying to pull strings, to use their connections to quell the storm raging online. In their minds, they were just teaching a lesson to some disrespectful sophomore on behalf of their son. It wasn't like they had offended some god-tier figure, and their family had no beef with Happy Nest. Surely, if they found the right person to talk to, they could get them to show some deference. Unfortunately, this time, the tables were turned. It was the Vance family who had hit a brick wall. On a call with Leo, David Cheng's voice boomed with confidence. "That kid's parents pulled some strings and found their way to me. They want us to take down the article and kill the buzz." "Huh. A department head from the city's Department of Education wants me, David Chung, to give him face? Just last week, the city's second-in-command personally led a delegation to our headquarters to give us an award. And on Monday, I had dinner and drinks with the heads of the broadcasting and education bureaus. Who the hell does the Vance family think they are? You think I'm scared of them?" He finished by thumping his chest, making a bold promise to his company's co-founder and CSO. "Don't you worry about a thing, kid. Happy Nest has your back." Carter Vance's reputation was in ruins, not just on the Berkeley campus, but throughout the entire Bay Area college community. Almost every student at Berkeley had read the article on Happy Nest and was filled with righteous anger. They cheered at the public shaming of the rich kid. Back in the advertising program, Marco Shaw and the others in room 520 were ecstatic. Serves him right. How many disgusting things has that kid done? Thinking his family could cover for him. Did he really think it would never come out? He got what he deserved. They turned to Leo, slapping him on the shoulder with congratulatory grins. "Man, you got lucky, Leo. I don't know what hero posted that stuff on Happy Nest, but they did the world a favor." And Happy Nest stood its ground. They wouldn't take the article down. Now, that Vance kid and his family are finished. To this, Leo just smiled. Yeah, lucky. Just as he had said before, teaching Carter Vance a lesson was no big deal. Unleashing a weapon like Happy Nest was like using a cannon to shoot a mosquito. Total overkill. Room 520 was filled with celebration, but then Leon thought of something, his expression turning worried. But Vance is screwed, sure. What's the final word on you getting into a fight? The school still hasn't budged, right? Indeed. With Happy Nest entering the fray, the small storm had been whipped into a raging tempest. In this situation, Berkeley's official response remained uncertain. As one of the nation's top universities, they couldn't simply condone the egregious actions of someone like Carter Vance. But at the same time, they couldn't let online public opinion dictate their principles. The university's senior administration was reportedly deliberating. Rumors were swirling. While Carter Vance was certainly in the wrong, another student's act of publicly assaulting a fellow student was still a serious violation of school regulations. That, too, cannot be tolerated. Such talk was being fueled by Carter Vance's family, especially his vice dean grandfather, who was working behind the scenes. When Leo's roommates heard this, their faces fell. What does that mean? So, in the end, Leo still gets punished for hitting that guy. This was the Vance family's counterattack from the brink of disaster. Carter's mother, on her last visit to the administrative office, reportedly spat out a threat through gritted teeth. If my son's future is ruined, that Wallace kid isn't getting off easy either. If it came down to mutually assured destruction, the outcome was still deeply worrying. And yet, just as the situation reached its peak, as the storm raged outside and rumors flew, the little gazebo in front of the old faculty housing at Berkeley remained a picture of peace and tranquility. Inside, an old man and a young man were casually playing a game. Kid, I told you to keep a low profile, not to be so aggressive. See? Now you're in trouble. Can't blame me for this one. The guy was making moves on my wife. I had to hit him. You got your satisfaction, and you got yourself in trouble. Now they're insisting you violated school rules by hitting him, forcing the school to give you a major demerit. What are you going to do? That's why I came to you, old-timer. TSK. When you need nothing, it's Gramps. When you're in trouble, it's old-timer. The chief strategy officer of Happy Nest. You're quite the flexible one, aren't you? Hey, you do all that. All right, tell me. When did you figure out who I was? The second time we met, I remembered. You little fox. Takes one to know one. You're no different, are you? Just curious. My background is pretty well hidden. How did you recognize me? Carl Carlson, the chairman of Nexus, was a student of mine. And with that, the full picture came into focus for both of them. Their first meeting was a coincidence. The subsequent games in the gazebo were a deliberate, unspoken dance of mutual assessment. The old fox and the young fox looked at each other and grinned, a shared appreciation in their eyes. Leo casually placed a white piece on the board. We can talk business later. This little problem of mine isn't solved yet. What's your take, old-timer? The old man shot him a sideways glance. You make it sound so easy. You're that sure a half-retired old fossil like me can fix this. Leo nodded, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Of course. It wasn't flattery. On the grounds of Berkeley, there was truly nothing this man couldn't handle. Alastair Finch, former president of Berkeley, now president emeritus, member of the National Academy of Engineering, former director of the National Financial Research Institute, special advisor to the Federal Reserve's Monetary Policy Committee. He had personally authored the white paper on systemic financial risk in the United States. Any fluctuation in the Fed's exchange rate greater than 2% required a signature on a risk assessment report. His opinions on financial matters were delivered directly to the highest levels of government. The first time they met in the gazebo, Leo had thought he looked familiar. A quick search online revealed the old man's identity. Subsequent games were, for Leo, a golden opportunity to open a channel to Berkeley's official administration for Happy Nest. As for this Carter Vance affair, compared to the grand commercial strategies and high-level planning, it was, for both him and the old man, utterly trivial. So now, Alastair Finch just smiled and pointed a finger at Leo. You rascal, you owe me a favor. As he spoke, the old man picked up a black piece and placed it gently on the board. Tell Happy Nest to pull the article. I'll give you a proper resolution. The words were spoken with casual confidence. Like a clap of thunder, the storm was settled. Woo! It feels good to write about serious business sometimes. Daily request for boosts and gifts. Just as the storm reached its zenith, it suddenly dissipated into thin air. Early Friday morning, the trending article about the rich kid on Happy Nest discussion board was quietly taken down. The buzz was intentionally suppressed. A new promotional banner for the Campus All-Stars competition was posted, effortlessly diverting the majority of the attention. Such is the nature of the internet. No matter how sensational the topic, its lifespan rarely exceeds 3 days. Of course, Some people noticed the deliberate manipulation and speculated that the Vance family had pulled strings again, successfully burying the scandal once more. This led to outrage among many Berkeley students who questioned the integrity of the situation. This is Berkeley. Are we really going to let someone with connections cover up such disgusting behavior? However, before this outrage could even begin to ferment, it was completely extinguished by a new development the very next morning. Friday morning, Berkeley University officially released a statement. The statement announced the results of the disciplinary action against freshman student Carter V. It was determined that Carter V. had, on multiple occasions, harassed female students, causing psychological distress. He was given a formal demerit. Furthermore, an investigation had confirmed irregularities in Carter V.'s college entrance exam scores and admission, linked to favoritism from a relative within the university administration. He was to be expelled. In addition, there was another, more discreet announcement regarding an internal personnel change. The former vice dean of the School of Business, James V., citing advanced age, had voluntarily requested to step down from his duties. He was stripped of his position as vice dean and reassigned to be the deputy director of the university's employee union. At first glance, it might not seem like much, but a closer look revealed the truth. To go from a prestigious and promising position as a vice dean of the School of Business to a deputy director of the employee union was a fall from grace of epic proportions. It was a demotion that, while preserving a sliver of dignity, had completely shattered his career. The two pieces of good news sent countless Berkeley students into joyous celebration. Their respect and affection for their alma mater soared back to its peak. That's our Berkeley. This sacred ivory tower of learning will not tolerate a single speck of filth. Berkeley rules, screw North. Oh wait, got carried away. But since I'm halfway there, might as well say, screw Northwood High. Amidst the excitement, a small minority were stunned by the university's swift and decisive action. It was so forceful, so resolute, to be able to dismiss a vice dean of a major school so effortlessly. There were only 2 or 3 people in the entire university with that kind of power. They just didn't know who had made the move. There was one other thing that caught all the students by surprise. The matter of Leo Wallace assaulting a fellow student, which had been a hot topic of debate, was also resolved. The university's final decision was to simply have him write a 300-word self-criticism essay. That was it. The official explanation was a masterpiece of understatement. During a sparring match in the gym's boxing ring, fists and feet have no eyes. Accidental slips can happen. This is considered reasonable. The students who read this explanation were dumbfounded. What the hell? They can do that. Leo's classmates and his roommates from room 520, however, were overjoyed. Reasonable. Totally reasonable. Damn, that's the most reasonable thing I've ever heard. Reasonable is one word for it. At the LNS house, Claire Sterling was looking at the latest announcement on Berkeley's official website on her phone, a thoughtful expression on her face. She turned to look at her boyfriend, who was diligently writing his essay at the dining table, and frowned slightly. But there are only 2 or 3 people at Berkeley with the power and ability to pull this off. Even the vice president, Charles Sterling, knows wouldn't be enough. Who was it that stepped in? And why would they do you such a huge favor? Claire could speculate about the article on Happy Nest going viral. Her boyfriend's Mako Entertainment had a partnership with Happy Nest because of the battle through the Heavens browser game. And with Happy Nest's current clout in the tech world, they certainly didn't need to be afraid of the insignificant Vance family. But for Berkeley's administration to personally step in and back up her little fool, that was something Claire couldn't quite figure out. At the dining table, the 300-word essay was finished in a flash. Leo stretched, looked up at his girlfriend, and grinned. Who knows? Maybe I just got lucky. Maybe some big shot at the university saw how handsome I am and wants to set me up with his granddaughter. Trigger word detected. On the sofa, Claire's eyebrows shot up. Oh, you want to be someone else's grandson-in-law? Leo froze. Then, realizing his mistake, his face fell in horror. I'm so dead. No, I was just kidding. What granddaughter? Huh, my heart belongs only to my dear Bertha Sue. Ow, ow, ow. Honey, easy, be gentle. The next day, in the gazebo in front of the old faculty housing at Berkeley, the old president, Alastair Finch, looked at the young man across the game board with a curious, gossipy expression. It's not even fall yet. Why are you wearing a scarf? Are you that frail kid? Leo subconsciously touched the scarf around his neck, looking perfectly nonchalant. This is called fashion. You're just not up on the latest trends, old-timer. The truth was his neck was covered in bite marks and hickeys, a clear declaration of ownership left by a certain jealous Ms. Bertha Sue. It was not something he could display in public. With the Carter-Vance affair concluded, the old man and the young man met again. Now that their identities were out in the open, they were talking business. One side represented Happy Nest's ambitions to use Berkeley as the first step in a plan to forge deep partnerships with universities across the country. The other side had to uphold the principles and interests of Berkeley. After all, it was a top-tier university with a rich heritage and its own rules. It didn't easily enter into public commercial partnerships with private companies. Leo had expected the negotiations to be fraught with disagreements, a long and drawn-out battle. But to his surprise, Dr. Finch, after simply asking about Happy Nest's proposal and the framework of the collaboration, agreed without a moment's hesitation. It went so smoothly that Leo was taken aback. He almost suspected the old man really did have a granddaughter he was trying to marry off. He cautiously voiced his question, only to be met with a sputtering old man who blew a mouthful of tea in his face. As he wiped his face with a tissue, he listened humbly to the old president's words. "Listen up, kid. I knew who you were long before I knew you were the chief strategy officer of Happy Nest. The president emeritus of Berkeley University. Anyone whose titles was heavy enough to crush a man. This was someone who could be invited to the Capitol to lecture the nation's top policymakers. For him to set aside time to play games with and observe a young man for so many days. This kind of treatment initially left even Leo himself a bit stunned. Even Happy Nest, the hottest company in the tech world right now, didn't carry enough weight to warrant this kind of attention from a man of his stature. Only now did he finally hear the reason. Last August, when a new freshman had just arrived, Dr. Finch began slowly. On the very first day, I heard about 2 new students who had subdued a criminal on a train. The station police sent over a commendation. That was the first time I heard the name Leo Wallace. Then there was the second time. In December, I heard that same criminal had escaped from prison and was recaptured downtown. The one who fought and captured him, getting injured in the process, was that same Leo Wallace. The police sent another commendation. I remember thinking this Leo Wallace kid might be a lot of things, but he sure is unlucky to run into the same criminal twice. The third time was this past March. A few departments from your School of Humanities organized a spring trip to Spirit Springs Mountain. A flash flood hit. Those kids from the school were all good kids. In a moment of crisis, they evacuated the elderly, women, and children first. I heard there was one kid who, on the last trip down, was supposed to leave but turned back to save a child. He threw the child across a rock slide to safety, even if it meant he couldn't get on the bus himself, and was left to face the torrential rain and flood alone. Just hearing about it was terrifying. Thankfully, everyone was safe in the end, and when I asked for the name, it was Leo Wallace again. At this point, Dr. Finch looked up at the handsome young man across from him, a puzzled expression on his face. How is it that wherever there's a disaster, there you are? Trouble just follows you everywhere. Are you cursed or something? Leo let out a dry laugh. Ha ha, yeah, I wonder about that myself. It's probably just a coincidence. Just a coincidence. Dr. Finch shook his head, not pressing the issue. He poured himself a cup of tea, took a sip, and continued. After all that, the name Leo Wallace stuck with me. I got curious, so I looked into you, and I found out quite a lot. I learned you're quite the troublemaker. Caused a sensation at the freshman welcome gala when the campus queen presented you with flowers. And your girlfriend is Charles Sterling's daughter. Not bad. Then I found out about the lethal and savage couple, the reasonable couple, and this whole Northwood custom coincidence reasonable screw Northwood high business. The old man's brow furrowed. What is all that nonsense? Leo wiped the sweat from his brow and quickly refilled the old man's teacup. We're getting off track, off track. Let's not talk about that. Dr. Finch took another sip of tea, shot Leo a look, and went on. And last winter break, during the snowstorms in the South, you organized a charity fundraiser in Northwood, using Berkeley's name for a joint bake sale. The proposal you sent to the university. I read it. Quick thinker. Memory bread, acceptance toast. Buy this and get into Berkeley. A whole set of clever tricks. But you did a beautiful job. A real class act. The old man offered a grudging but fair compliment. Leo, meanwhile, was sweating bullets. The tiny, cartoon version of himself in his mind was frantically trying to recall just how much trouble he'd caused over the past year. I can't be so reckless anymore. If it were just all of that, Dr. Finch continued, it would only mean that Berkeley had produced another promising, mischievous talent. In its 70 years, Berkeley has had its share of geniuses and prodigies. One more wouldn't be anything special. However, here, Dr. Finch paused, looking at Leo intently. It wasn't until the great Southwest quake and what you and Happy Nest did for the disaster area that you truly caught my eye. It was dusk by the time Leo left the gazebo. The sky was ablaze with the colors of the sunset. Walking down a tree-lined path on campus, the old man's words still echoed in his ears. Just being the CSO of Happy Nest doesn't mean much. I've mentored plenty of CEOs of public companies and billionaires over the years. The chief strategy officer of a new internet unicorn isn't enough to make me take notice. But what you did after May, that was different. The Brainiac Blitz quiz promoting scientific literacy for all, spreading earthquake and disaster preparedness knowledge that benefited thousands in the Southwest. The candlelight vigil on Happy Nest when a disaster struck. The coordinated effort to open an online channel for rescue information. And at the charity gala, a new company donating $32 million, the lifeblood of your business. An individual act of heroism is a small good deed. But what you did after that, that was a great service. That was patriotism. That was remarkable. At this point, the president emeritus of Berkeley, a man who was a guest of honor to the highest leaders in the state and the nation, had personally stood up and poured Leo a cup of tea. It was a gesture of respect that no more than 5 people in the entire Bay Area were worthy of receiving. A gentleman has 3 great accomplishments: service, words, and virtue. As the ancient scholars said, to establish a conscience for heaven and earth, to secure a destiny for the people, to carry on the lost teachings of past sages, and to create peace for all future generations. In its 70 years, Berkeley's motto has sought nothing more, not for profit or gain, but to cultivate leaders for the nation. To produce 10 or 100 millionaires, 1,000 billionaires, is no great honor, but to produce one scholar with a brilliant mind and a heart for his country, that is worthy of a great celebration. Kid, you just keep walking steadily down this path you're on. Hold on to that spirit and that ambition. Keep your country in your heart and the desire to serve the world in your mind. Never mind earning 10, 100, or 1,000 billion. The heights you are destined to reach may one day be something even I have to look up to and applaud. This path is not an easy one, but as long as you don't stray, as long as I am at Berkeley, this university will be your strongest shield. His thoughts returned to the present. Leo looked up at the brilliant sunset and smiled. He took out his phone and dialed a number. When the call connected, he spoke casually. "It's done." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then, an eruption of joyous, celebratory cheers from the conference room at Happy Nest headquarters, led by David Chung himself. And with that, Happy Nest's strategy for deep collaboration with universities had successfully taken its first, crucial step. And from that day forward, the biggest dark horse in the nation's tech scene, which had been relatively quiet for some time, was about to stir up a storm that would once again shake the world. Small side story finished, push the main business plotline forward, and set up a big climax for later. Don't think I can finish in 2 months, so we'll see how it goes. Daily requests for boosts and gifts. That weekend, on what should have been a peaceful day of rest, a sudden piece of news sent shockwaves through the nation's tech industry. Happy Nest and Berkeley University issued a joint statement, announcing they had reached a preliminary agreement for a deep, collaborative partnership. Berkeley, while maintaining the fundamental privacy of its students, would grant Happy Nest partial access to its systems. The Happy Nest social media platform would directly import student information, providing richer and more convenient technological support for Berkeley's student management system. They would also jointly develop an educational training system, deeply advancing the university's informatization project. The weight and significance of this announcement were immense. It meant that Happy Nest had actually begun to successfully open up official channels of cooperation with the nation's universities, using a top-down approach to further dominate the college market. And with Berkeley, second only to Harvard and Yale, as the benchmark, securing this partnership meant that other universities in the Bay Area would be swayed to follow suit. It was foreseeable that in the near future, the entire Bay Area would become Happy Nest's impenetrable fortress. No competitor, no matter how strong, would be able to make a dent. Just 6 months ago, it was a fledgling startup born in a second-floor office on Wanning Road. Now, it had the momentum of a conquering tiger, poised to dominate the entire West Coast. The last few sentences were taken from a column in the Southern Province Financial Weekly. The author was full of praise for Happy Nest's recent strategic planning and was particularly in awe of the masterstroke of securing Berkeley, seemingly out of nowhere. Getting an official in with universities was no easy task, let alone a top-3 institution like Berkeley. To pull something like this off, people's minds immediately went to the mysterious and low-profile CISO, one of Happy Nest's twin stars. Only a figure like that could once again achieve such an unimaginable feat. Financial columnists, news channels, magazines, and newspapers all went into a frenzy. Reporters and experts scrambled, trying every possible means to find a lead on the identity of the Happiness CSO just for a chance at a face-to-face interview. Happiness competitors were panicking. They never expected that after just a month or two of quiet, that damn CSO would pull off something this big. How the hell did this Zhou guy do it? Who is he? Besides his last name, is there really no other information on him? The most panicked of all was the Quad. They had just received a massive round of funding. After rebranding from My Campus, the company was full of ambition, ready to show upstarts like Happiness to his boss. But before they could even unleash their big move, the other side had casually thrown a jab that left the Quad's entire senior management and investors reeling. We were just figuring out how to win over the college student market. And you went and secured Berkeley and practically all the other universities in the Bay Area from the top down. How are we supposed to compete with that? A quick investigation confirmed that this was once again the work of that damned Happiness CSO. The news made the Quad's executives see red. That bastard. Their desire to eliminate him grew even stronger. Naturally, the pressure trickled down. They redoubled their efforts to find any and all information on Happiness CSO. Unfortunately, although Happiness was expanding its workforce, its internal screening process was incredibly strict. Most new hires were referred by existing employees. Any suspicious candidates were immediately weeded out. The numerous moles the Quad had tried to plan had all failed. Their only sliver of hope came from their most capable agent, the undisputed star of their marketing department. A triumphant message came through. I have successfully infiltrated Mako Entertainment's Portland branch. Everything is proceeding smoothly. Serafina Vance herself was surprised at how smoothly things were going. Her resume received a response almost immediately. On the day of her formal interview at Mako Entertainment's new Portland office, she took a deep breath before entering, giving herself a mental pep talk. My opponent is the big boss of Mako Entertainment. He might have a close relationship with that mysterious CSO from Happiness. A powerful man surrounds himself with smart people. He must be incredibly intelligent. Be careful. Don't let him see through you. When she pushed open the door, she had already composed herself, radiating confidence and focus, ready for the challenge. The first thing she saw was a man sitting in the boss's chair. No, more accurately, just a boy. He couldn't have been more than 20, looking like a college student. But Serafina didn't underestimate him for a second. The intel her company had painstakingly gathered suggested that the legendary, enigmatic CSO of Happiness was also only in his early 20s. Perhaps that was why he was friends with the equally young boss of Mako Entertainment. With that thought, Serafina felt a renewed sense of caution. Looking at the Mako Entertainment boss, a Mr. Kevin Zhao, her expression grew more serious. She felt an inexplicable aura of profundity emanating from him. Even his ordinary-looking face seemed to hold a hidden depth. He was looking down at her resume, not yet having made eye contact, his tone casual. Serafina Vance. Your resume looks pretty good. Those few simple words made Serafina's heart skip a beat. It was a fake resume, carefully crafted to hide her identity. She was confident it would fool most people, but the boss's tone was so relaxed, as if he hadn't noticed a thing. That, in turn, made her wary. A man who could be friends with the Happiness CSO was no ordinary person. Was he really oblivious? Or was he testing her? 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. On the surface, she remained calm, smiling steadily. You're too kind. My resume is just a record of the past. I'm more interested in starting a new chapter of my career here at your company. It was a flawless response. It seemed to finally satisfy the man in the chair. Good attitude. But our company is very selective. The interview has to follow procedure. I need to ask you some questions. You only pass if you answer them correctly. Are you prepared? Serafina took a deep breath, straightened her back, and gathered all her focus. Yes, please go ahead. Kevin Zhao finally looked up from the desk, his eyes landing on the interviewee's face. And then his gaze froze. His eyes went wide. Serafina met the boss's gaze, feeling the weight of his stare and the sudden, intimidating intensity. Her heart clenched. She felt as if she was being seen through, completely exposed. The star agent from the Quad's marketing department took a sharp breath, her mind reeling. What a piercing gaze. Has he already figured me out? Forcing herself to suppress her anxiety, Serafina managed a smile she hoped was elegant and appropriate. Mr. Zhao, you haven't asked your question yet. Finally, the boss of Mako Entertainment seemed to snap out of his trance. All right, the question. He slammed his hand on the table and shot to his feet. As Serafina braced herself, ready to answer whatever challenge he threw at her, he broke into a warm, brilliant smile. Miss, when would be a convenient time for you to start? Serafina? Question mark. Don't worry, Leo. The recruitment plan is going perfectly. When Leo got the call from Kevin Zhao, that's what his friend declared, thumping his chest with confidence. He first reported on his work progress. Mako Entertainment's Portland branch was decorated, and the hiring was well underway. The original group of guys who had helped test browser games had all been officially brought on board by Kevin, forming the foundation of the market research department. They were now ready to coordinate with Wyatt Way's tech team in the Bay Area and work together on the Heavenly Tactics project. After the business talk, Kevin's tone shifted, becoming giddy. And I've got more good news. Remember how I told you we got a resume the first day we posted the job opening? The one from Serafina Vance? Well, she came in for an interview this morning. She's gorgeous. An absolute knockout. Tall, long legs, wavy hair, the works. I hired her on the spot. Leo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Kev, I told you to hire competent employees, focus on their skills. Don't just hire every pretty face you see. Kevin thumped his chest again. You can count on me, Leo. I already looked over her resume. She's got the skills. Her last job was in market research, so she has plenty of experience. It's a perfect fit for our department. And for market research, having a beautiful woman on the team is a natural advantage when it comes to negotiations. Leo had to admit he had a point. Kevin continued righteously. And I didn't just hire her on a whim. We went through the proper interview process, asked all the necessary questions. Leo was curious. What did you ask? Kevin said, completely serious. I asked her when she could come in and fill out the new hire paperwork. Leo, right? That was his friend, all right. Jokes aside, Leo wasn't too worried. He knew his friend well enough. Kevin might seem unreliable, but he never slacked off when it came to important things. He had promised to get the Portland branch up and running, and he would give it his all. Leo just offered a piece of friendly advice. Well, just be careful Tessa doesn't find out. You don't want her to get jealous. Kevin waved his hand dismissively. No way. This is all for work. Besides, in our relationship, I'm the boss. If I say east, she doesn't dare go west. A man's got to have some authority, you know? You should learn from me, Leo. Huh. Feels like the temperature just dropped in here. Why is it so chilly all of a sudden? Then Leo heard Tessa Yuan's familiar, gentle voice from the other end of the line. Having a nice chat? 3 seconds of silence. Kevin's voice came back, strained but trying to sound calm as he bade his friend a tragic farewell. Leo, I've got something to take care of, so I'm going to go. The call ended. In LNS house, Leo observed 3 seconds of silence for his fallen comrade. Claire came out of the kitchen with 2 bottles of juice, her slippers shuffling as her long legs carried her across the room. Was that Kevin? He hung up already. Leo nodded solemnly. Yeah, he's been hung up, literally. The following week, everything returned to a state of peace and harmony. The students at Berkeley would occasionally bring up the now-expelled Carter Vance, gossiping about the incident. A rumor was making the rounds. Apparently, Leo wasn't the only one who had beaten up the rich kid in the gym. Before that, the campus ice queen herself had gotten her hands on him. A mixed doubles beatdown. Many students sighed in admiration. The lethal and savage couple. They live up to their name. Meanwhile, the couple in question continued to live their leisurely campus life. From Wednesday to Friday, while Claire was at the new campus for classes, Leo would wander over to the old faculty housing, driven by a benevolent desire to keep a lonely old man company by playing a few rounds of 5 in a row with the esteemed President Emeritus, Dr. Finch. Now that their identities were out in the open, they got along just as well as before. The atmosphere in the gazebo was, as always, warm and harmonious. Old man, you're cheating again. Don't think I didn't see you steal one of my pieces. Nonsense. Which eye did you see that with? Am I, the president of Berkeley, the kind of person who would stoop to such tricks? I saw you stuff it under your ass. Lift your butt up if you got the guts. I will not. Lift it. I won't. They hadn't even finished one game, and their throats were already raw from shouting. They both picked up their teacups and took a long gulp to soothe their throats. Once rehydrated, Dr. Finch shot Leo a sideways glance. Kid, you're the CSO of Happy Nest. You spend all day playing games with a half-retired old man. Don't you have actual work to do? Leo replied with a righteous expression. The CSO is responsible for the overall strategy. Once the direction is set, the people below can handle the rest. It was true. After Leo had secured the deal with Berkeley and gotten Dr. Finch's approval, the specific implementation was now being handled by the teams from several departments at Happy Nest. The hardest part was taking the first step. Their boss, Leo, had taken care of that for them. If they couldn't handle the rest, they didn't deserve their salaries. As for the CEO, David Chung, he was personally leading the charge, taking the Berkeley Partnership Agreement and making the rounds at other universities in the Bay Area. With Berkeley setting the example, negotiations with other universities were 90% easier. The entire company was buzzing with high morale and fighting spirit. So Leo was free again. It was a similar story at Mako Entertainment. Kevin had the market research department in Portland mostly set up. Here in the Bay Area, Wyatt Way had expanded the tech team. The two teams were now coordinating, along with the art department, to push forward on the Heavenly Tactics project. Leo didn't need to worry about that either. There was, however, one small problem. With a significant increase in staff at Mako Entertainment, coordinating between the three departments had become cumbersome. Task flows, project timelines, priority rankings, all jumbled together, it was easy for things to get chaotic. Most of Mako's employees were still students or recent graduates. They lacked project management experience and organizational skills, making it easy for things to go off the rails. Of the three department heads, Kevin didn't have the necessary coordinating experience. Wyatt had to focus all his energy on development and testing, and Isabella, well, she was out of the question. Leo himself could easily handle the job, but it wasn't reasonable for the boss to be bogged down in so many trivial details. After all, if he was busy with minutiae, how could he focus on the important things? Like having dinner with his girlfriend, taking walks with his girlfriend, sleeping with his girlfriend. What came down to was this. Mako Entertainment needed a project manager. Someone smart, serious, hardworking, and willing to take initiative. Ideally, someone with management experience and a decisive personality. Leo was slightly troubled. A person like that. Where could I trick one? Find one. Another weekend was approaching. As was their tradition, the friends from room 205 and room 520 were planning to get together at the LNS house. Lily Lou had said she was free and would come too. Claire mentioned it to Leo casually. Oh, by the way, I invited Yvonne. The more the merrier. Leo had no problem with an extra guest. It was just one more set of chopsticks. But hearing her name made his eyes light up. An idea began to form. Daily requests for boosts and gifts thanks to Bai Ching Yu for the support. That Friday morning, Claire had classes on the new campus. In the afternoon, she sat in on her boyfriend's major course. The other three girls from room 205 did the same. Since they were all meeting at the LNS house for dinner that evening anyway, they decided to stay and wait for the guys from room 520 to finish their classes so they could all head back together. As a result, the advertising design class was graced with a beautiful sight. The professor was lecturing at the front of the room. The four girls from room 205 sat in the back row, listening with interest and even trying their hand at sketching some design concepts. Their presence seemed to invigorate the professor. He was more eloquent and charming than ever, his lecture flowing like a gentle spring breeze. His gaze, however, never seemed to linger on his own students in the front rows. It was fixed entirely on the four girls in the back. When it came time for the design portion of the class, the professor strolled through the aisles and, naturally, ended up at the back row. He looked at the girls' playful sketches and showered them with praise. Excellent. Truly excellent work. You all have a real talent for this. Have you ever considered transferring to the advertising program? I promise I would give you my full attention and guidance. The others? Not important. Those good-for-nothings can't compare to you young ladies. The entire advertising class in the front rows. ? Why do we suddenly feel so neglected? After class, the two groups of friends took the campus shuttle back to the old campus. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, and the scenery flew past the windows, a cool evening breeze washing over them. They had taken over the back row of the bus, their laughter filling the air. Other students on the bus would occasionally glance back, their eyes filled with admiration and envy at the close bond between the two dorms. Even setting aside the romantic couples, the deep friendship between them was enough to be praised. 40 minutes later, the shuttle arrived at the old campus parking lot. The group piled out and made a beeline for the supermarket just outside the East Gate, stocking up on groceries, drinks, and beer for the evening's feast. Then, laden with bags and cases of beer, they headed for the LNS house. On the way, I got a call from Lily Lou. She had just finished her classes and was on her way over with Yvonne Moreau. Marco, who was walking nearby, overheard the name and his eyes widened. Whoa, Yvonne Moreau? The freshman Yvonne is coming too. His exclamation caught the attention of Dylan and Leon, whose faces lit up. For real? The campus queen freshman. Leon had just voiced his excitement when he caught himself. He turned to Molly, his expression shifting to one of earnest sincerity. The campus queen is nothing compared to my Molly. I don't care about her at all. He then obediently offered his girlfriend a date cake. Marco and Dylan watched in awe. Damn, Half a year of dating and his danger sense has gotten razor sharp. The girls of room 205 had also heard of this year's campus queen. They were pleasantly surprised and happy to hear she was coming. They knew she was beautiful, the undisputed #1 among the freshmen, but they hadn't had a chance to meet her up close. They were curious and excited. Leo chimed in with an objective observation. Yvonne's a nice person, just a little hard to understand sometimes. Not long after, they arrived at the LNS house. Once inside the single slaughterhouse, Leo took the groceries to the kitchen to start preparing dinner. The others offered to help, but he waved them away like flies. It wasn't just the host being polite. It was the simple fact that out of the 8 of them, he was the only one with any cooking talent. The other 7 would only get in the way. They were probably less reliable than the fat-headed parrot. Reasonable, Leo called out to his beloved pet in the living room cage. Come help. The parrot flapped its wings and came flying over. Roger, Roger. It couldn't do much, but it could help scale a fish with its beak or pass him a spice jar. It sounded absurd, but this was the single slaughterhouse. Somehow it made sense. Besides cooking assistance, the esteemed parrot was now proficient in puzzle solving and photography, all thanks to the training of its female master. In the single slaughterhouse, no bird was idle. While Leo and Reasonable were busy in the kitchen, the others in the living room decided to roll up their sleeves and help with the big cleanup. Claire didn't object. With just the 2 of them living there, cleaning was a time-consuming chore. With a group of free laborers available, it would be a waste not to use them. She immediately started directing the operation, hoping to get the living and dining rooms cleaned before dinner. They all got to work. A little while later, the doorbell rang. Lily Lou and Yvonne Moreau had arrived. Claire went to open the door, and, sure enough, there stood the 2 beauties from the humanities department. Lily had been to the house several times and was already familiar with everyone. She slipped on a pair of slippers and walked right in. Whoa, a cleaning party. I'll lend a hand. It was Yvonne's first time, but she was naturally outgoing and greeted the curious and welcoming group without any shyness, nodding politely to each person. She called each of the room 205 girls senior with a sweet, well-behaved tone. When she turned to Marco, Leon, and Dylan, she was just as poised. Hello, Date Cake Senior. Hello, Marco Senior. Hello, Silent Senior. For Dylan, she even used sign language. Her impeccable looks and confident personality quickly won over the girls of room 205. They surrounded her, chattering with admiration. Marco waved his hand magnanimously. From now on, you're one of us. It's a good thing I don't go for girls in my own circle, otherwise I'd have to unleash my charm on you, huh? Yvonne looked at Marco and replied politely. It wouldn't have worked even if you had. You're overthinking it. The girls burst out laughing. Dylan thoughtfully handed his Gotham City brother a cherry tomato, suggesting he put his clown nose back on. Marco, driven by a sudden surge of malice, he grabbed a bag of snacks from the coffee table and offered it to Yvonne. It's almost dinner time. Are you hungry? Why don't you have one of your senior Claire's handmade cookies first? Leo was busy cooking in the kitchen when he heard a commotion from the living room. A little later, he brought out a plate of braised eggplant and set it on the table. What was all that noise just now? Marco, Dylan, Quinn, Molly, and the others all had looks of sheer horror on their faces. We just gave Yvonne one of Claire's handmade cookies. Leo froze. What? His first instinct was to grab his phone and call 911. Is she still alive? Then came an even more unbelievable answer. She is alive and kicking. As Quinn said this, she swallowed hard, as if she couldn't believe her own words. And Yvonne said it was delicious, that she loved it. Leo. He almost suspected that Quinn herself had eaten one of the cookies and it had addled her brain. But after hearing the explanation from the others, he understood. Marco's offer had been a prank. He was going to stop Yvonne before she actually ate the cookie. But he wasn't fast enough. Yvonne had popped the cookie into her mouth before he could intervene. Then, under the stunned gazes of everyone present, she chewed a few times, her cheeks puffing out, and swallowed it with ease. She looked perfectly fine, refreshed even. She even licked her lips, savoring the aftertaste. Delicious. The freshman campus queen, who had grown up in the old district, was used to hardship and was never a picky eater. A single cookie, even if it was a little hard, was something she could enjoy with gusto. She even said it reminded her of the pastries her late grandmother used to make, a familiar and comforting taste. She wiped her mouth and looked up at Claire, who had come over to see what was happening. Senior, are there any more cookies? Claire, question mark. When Bertha Sue understood what had happened, her eyes lit up. Yes, if you want more, I'll make them for you. Leo, having heard the full story, took a sharp breath. Holy crap. After Mr. Chien, Another human capable of withstanding Bertha Sue's cooking has appeared. Gibberish Girl's stock is soaring. Just then, Claire walked by, happily carrying a bag of cookies. She saw her boyfriend and announced, "From now on, my favorite person is Yvonne." Leo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Then what about your boyfriend?" Claire looked at him, then held up the bag of cookies. "Do you want a cookie?" Leo's pupils dilated in terror. He turned and fled back to the kitchen. No, you can go ahead and like Yvonne." At 7 o'clock sharp, a lavish feast was spread across the dining table. After hosting so many gatherings at the LNS house, Leo had become an expert. He could whip up a huge meal for a crowd with ease. They were all simple, home-cooked dishes, but they looked and smelled incredible. The regulars, already accustomed to Leo's cooking, clasped their hands together in preparation for their customary chant of praise be to Leo. Yvonne, on her first visit, was amazed. "Did you make all of this yourself, Senior?" She turned to Claire, curious. "Senior, your cookies are so good. Didn't you help with the cooking?" Everyone else at the table. It was the most terrifying thing they had ever heard. A cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. They rushed to intervene. "Your Senior Claire's cooking is too good. It's reserved for special occasions, like hosting the Queen of England. The likes of us aren't worthy. If you're really interested, she can cook for you privately later." The message was clear. Under no circumstances could Bertha Sue be allowed to regain her passion for cooking. Before they started eating, everyone raised their glasses for a toast. After a chorus of clinking glass, they all downed their drinks. Marco sighed with admiration. "Our gatherings are getting bigger and bigger, and more beautiful women." It was true. The original 4 from room 205 were already a powerhouse of beauty. Then Lily Lou joined. Now, with Yvonne, they had a table full of department and campus beauties. And that wasn't even counting Anna, who was busy with her internship, or Tessa in Portland. If they were all gathered together, it would be a veritable garden of beauties. Leon chuckled. "A lot of guys in our class are so jealous when they hear about our parties here. They all want to come and see the beauties for themselves." Marco's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. If we advertised this and sold tickets to the whole university, we'd make a fortune." The words were barely out of his mouth before he was mobbed by the girls. "Tickets? Are you out of your mind? You think we're animals in a zoo? You're asking for a beating." When a battered and bruised Marco finally returned to the table, his hair a mess, they had finished dinner and were now drinking and chatting. The girls were all curious about Yvonne, peppering her with questions. After hearing about her family and her life story, they were filled with sympathy and admiration. Yvonne herself didn't mind, smiling and saying she never felt sorry for herself. Her past had only made her more determined to work hard and become a better, more successful person. She turned to Claire, her eyes shining. "Senior Claire, you're my role model. I want to become as amazing as you are one day." Everyone at the table cheered for her ambition. "You can do it, Yvonne. We believe in you. You're the next female CEO." Leo's eyes lit up too, looking at the ambitious young woman before him. Smart, serious, hardworking, and with a natural talent for organization and a decisive personality. He thought, "I think I've found her." Yvonne was earnestly talking to the other girls about how she had joined the student union and various clubs to get experience for her future career when a certain young man's voice piped up, full of well-meaning advice. "The student union and school clubs aren't that useful. If you're really that ambitious, you should join a real company as soon as possible. Working on real commercial projects will challenge you and help you grow much faster. You won't waste your time and talent." Yvonne instinctively turned toward the voice and was met with the handsome, earnest face of Leo Hammer Wallace. "Coincidentally, I happen to know just such a company. The founder is kind and approachable and never exploits his employees. The work environment is elegant and harmonious. The colleagues are friendly, hardworking, and always have the nicest things to say." The following Monday afternoon, after her broadcasting and journalism class on the new campus, Yvonne Moreau arrived at the address of Mako Entertainment on Kongping Road. She went upstairs and walked into the office. She was greeted by the sight of a woman with a fertilizer bag on her head. "Wait, a fertilizer bag?" Yvonne blinked, taking a second look. Yes, a woman with a fertilizer bag on her head was holding a cup of milk tea and walking over to the trash can. Through a hole cut in the front of the bag, Yvonne could see her face. When she saw her clearly, even Yvonne was a little stunned. "She's beautiful. The second most beautiful girl I've seen after Senior Claire." The woman looked up and saw Yvonne. She froze for a second, then her eyes went wide. "Whoa!" Acting on instinct, Isabella Zhao's eyes lit up, and she reached out to touch Yvonne's cheek. "Girl, you are so pretty." She caught herself halfway and quickly pulled her hand back, scratching her head sheepishly. Ahem. Can I help you? Yvonne was still a bit confused by the fertilizer bag and the behavior. Hearing the question, she snapped out of it and smiled politely. Yes, hello. My name is Yvonne Moreau. Leo Wallace sent me. I'm a new hire. Isabella was taken aback, a question mark appearing above her head. Leo Wallace? Who's Leo Wallace? The name sounded vaguely familiar. Wasn't he that unlucky guy from the school gossip who got into a fight and pissed off someone important? What did he have to do with Mako Entertainment? Yvonne was also confused. Isn't Leo Wallace the boss of the company? Isabella was even more confused. Huh? Isn't Kevin Zhao our boss? Now Yvonne was completely lost. Kevin Zhao? Who's Kevin Zhao? She frowned, asking seriously. Are you sure you're not mistaken? Isabella asked suspiciously. Are you sure you're not the one who's mistaken? Gibberish girl and clueless Zhao stared at each other, sizing each other up. The same thought occurred to both of them. This girl is really pretty, but she doesn't seem very bright. Daily requests for boosts and gifts. Although their first meeting had started with a small misunderstanding and a few unexpected hiccups, the situation was quickly and effectively resolved. Isabella Zhao made a direct call to her black-hearted boss for confirmation. On the other end of the line, Leo confirmed for a bewildered Isabella that Yvonne Moreau, the gibberish girl, was indeed a new employee at Mako Entertainment. As for the Kevin Zhao Leo Wallace name mix-up, the handsome devil's explanation was instantaneous and effortless. To Isabella, he said, of course I'm the boss, but we need to keep this on the down low, you understand? Only core employees like you know this top-level secret. Your junior, Yvonne, is still new. As a pillar of this company, I need you to look after her. Feeling the profound trust of her boss, the former it girl of the humanities department was so moved she practically burst with joy, her tail puffing up with pride. Even if you say that, it's not like I'm happy or anything. Looking after my junior? No problem, you can count on me. Then he turned around and, in a call to Yvonne, skillfully deployed an entirely different script. Of course I'm the boss. Your senior, Isabella, is very pretty, but her head isn't always screwed on straight. It's normal for her to get things mixed up. So even though you're the junior, once you're in the company, remember to look after her. Okay? Keep up the good work. Claire and I both see great things in you. Yvonne listened to this explanation and nodded in understanding. It all made sense now. That explains it. Isabella does seem a little ditzy. Don't worry, Leo. I'll do my best, she promised with sincere determination before hanging up. Yvonne and Isabella looked at each other again. Buoyed by her boss's praise, Isabella puffed out her chest heroically. Don't you worry, little sis. I'll have your back here at the company. She's a new hire, so she can't know the course secrets. Poor thing, she thought. I'll have to be extra nice to her. Yvonne smiled politely and nodded. Thank you, Isabella. I'll be in your care from now on. Poor girl, she really isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, Yvonne mused internally. I'll just humor her and let her think she's the one taking care of me. Over the weekend, during a dinner at the LNS house, Leo had relied on his slick tongue to easily recruit Yvonne Moreau into Mako Entertainment. As it turned out, that slick tongue had successfully secured the company another formidable general. Though young, Yvonne's abilities were outstanding. At the freshman welcome gala, she had been the host, but had also stepped in to organize and coordinate, pushing every part of the event forward with calm efficiency. Now at Mako Entertainment, tasked with coordinating communication between the tech, art, and market research departments, she was completely in her element. She took to the role with ease, quickly familiarizing herself with the company's project pipelines and beginning to shine. In just a few days, she had untangled and clarified the myriad of messy, complicated details that had plagued interdepartmental communication. Even more astounding was the terrifyingly diligent and ambitious spirit she displayed. As a freshman, Yvonne's schedule was packed with classes and other school activities that took up most of her time and energy. But that didn't affect her efficiency at Mako Entertainment in the slightest. Not enough time? She could accomplish in 1 minute what took others 3. Still not enough? She'd just sleep less, putting in extra hours to not only finish the day's planned work, but to exceed the quota. Her diligence was so aggressive, it was almost frightening. Even Isabella, who had previously been the company's most dedicated grinder, was left staring in a daze. She cautiously approached Yvonne, trying to offer some advice. Yvonne, you don't have to push yourself so hard. When you work like this, it puts a lot of pressure on me. A sense of crisis was creeping in. It seemed her title as the company's most hardworking employee was about to be usurped. It wasn't just Isabella. Wyatt Way was also stunned by the new hire's insane work ethic. He called Leo, gushing with amazement. Holy shit, this girl is an absolute machine. Bro, how much are you paying her? On the other end of the line, Leo answered with righteous indignation. Money? That's so crass. I offered her a dream. Wyatt was silent for a moment. Bro, you are a stone-cold capitalist. Leo's expression didn't change. As I should be. Oh, by the way, I looked into that rescue car thing. I can set you up with a monthly subscription plan. A monthly plan? Did that mean guaranteed protection from Claire the Demoness for a whole month? Wyatt froze, then exploded with joy. Bro, you my goddamn hero. The next second, he hung up, his blood boiling with newfound motivation as he charged back to his own work. In the school cafeteria, Leo hung up and put his phone away, equally satisfied. After the latest round of hiring, the tech, art, and market research departments were all fully staffed. The only missing piece had been someone to coordinate and integrate their efficiency. Now, everything was perfect. Everyone was working hard, which meant he, the boss, could go back to his regularly scheduled slacking. Claire walked over with her tray and sat down across from him. How are things at the company? Leo waved a hand grandly. Everything's running smoothly. Claire pouted. You stole my precious Yvonne from Mako Entertainment. I had my eye on her first. Leo didn't even blush. Hey, don't say that. What's mine is yours, right? You're the boss's wife at Mako Entertainment. After all, that one phrase, boss's wife, was all it took to appease Bertha Sue. She dropped the issue and asked with genuine curiosity, is everything going smoothly for Kevin in Portland, too? He's handling that whole operation by himself. Can he manage? Leo grinned and nodded. Don't worry, it's going great. He called me yesterday to report his progress. Said he hired a new female employee who's incredibly useful. Serafina Vance also felt that her infiltration plan was proceeding smoothly. A little too smoothly, in fact. So smoothly that it made her suspect something was wrong. When she had first arrived, she'd been on high alert, preparing to face the mysterious and unfathomable boss of Mako Entertainment, knowing she couldn't afford a single misstep. But now, a week into the job, her days were peaceful and quiet. There was none of the thrilling tension a spy was supposed to feel. It was so safe, she could have moved her family in with her. However, the star agent of the Quad's marketing department had not forgotten her mission. Her objective at Mako Entertainment's Portland office was to get close to the big boss, Kevin Zhao, and dig up more intelligence. Or, better yet, find a clue that could lead her to the mysterious CSO of Happy Nest. She looked up from her desk and saw her boss walking out of his office, a triumphant smile on his face as he talked on his phone. Leo, don't you worry, man. I got everything under control here. All right, I gotta go. Talk later. Serafina discreetly strained her ears, quickly memorizing the contents of the call. If she wasn't mistaken, this was the fourth time this week her boss had spoken with this man he called Leo. Could it be the legendary, mysterious chief strategy officer of Happy Nest? She felt a flicker of excitement, sensing she was closing in on the truth. She quickly suppressed it, schooling her expression back to normal. Looking up with a smile, she asked her boss in a casual tone, Mr. Zhao, who's Leo? I've noticed you call him a lot this week. Hearing the question from his branch's only and most capable employee, Kevin answered without a second thought. Oh, that's my best friend, Leo Wallace. Serafina froze. Leo Wallace. Last name Wallace. Not Joe. There was no connection to Happy Nest's mysterious CSO. Serafina sighed internally, reluctantly discarding her theory. Of course, she had been thinking too simply. The mission was not yet complete. She had to keep trying. Though she hadn't found any clues about Happy Nest's mysterious CSO, Serafina Vance wasn't discouraged. Her professional instincts as a corporate spy kicked in, and she continued to probe further about the Leo Kevin had just mentioned. Kevin didn't hide a thing, answering cheerfully, he's the big boss of Mako Entertainment. Everyone here in the Portland office, including me, works for him. The statement made Serafina pause for a second. Then her face relaxed into a look of understanding. Oh, I see. On the surface, she seemed to get it. But inside, the star agent from the Quad looked at Kevin Zhao and couldn't help but laugh to herself. What a character this Mr. Zhao. After a week of working together, he really did seem like a simple-minded, guileless college student. But his acting was flawless. Even in front of her, his most capable subordinate, he was so cautious with his words, never forgetting to maintain his cover as a mere employee. If she hadn't already investigated and discovered the truth, she might have actually been fooled by his performance. Lately, her work in the Portland office involved communicating with the art department back in Berkeley. She'd been in contact with its department head, a certain Isabella Zhao, whose guard wasn't nearly as high. She had unintentionally let it slip. The big boss of Mako Entertainment was Kevin Zhao. This latest attempt at probing only revealed that the big boss was still wary of her. But instead of feeling discouraged, Serafina felt a new surge of fighting spirit. This is how it should be. Only an opponent of this caliber is worthy of my full effort to conquer and claim. As the undisputed star of the Quad's marketing department, Serafina Vance wasn't afraid of a powerful opponent. Because no matter how powerful, as long as he was a man, he was destined to fall at her feet once she unleashed her charms. She had already done her homework. This Kevin Zhao had a girlfriend, someone he'd been with since high school. But that didn't matter. With the right swing of the shovel, no wall was too sturdy to be dug out from under. Watching Kevin's back as he returned to his office, Serafina's lips curved into a confident, seductive smile. No matter how brilliant the startup genius. Before me, Serafina Vance. He won't be able to resist this honey trap. Evening. At the Mako Entertainment office in Portland, the other members of the research team had long since clocked out and gone home. Kevin Zhao, however, was still at his desk, his focus entirely on his computer as he typed, organizing the latest evaluation data. It was well past closing time, but Kevin had no intention of leaving. Ever since his buddy Leo had entrusted him with the Portland office, he had sworn not to betray his best friend's trust. He knew he lacked the experience and ability for such a position, but he could at least make up for it with hard work. If he couldn't be as smart as others, he would compensate with diligence and sweat. The crisp sound of keyboard clicks echoed in the office. Then, the sound of high heels approached from the hallway, growing closer. The office door was gently pushed open by a slender hand. Hearing the noise, Kevin looked up from his desk to see a bewitching figure leaning elegantly against the doorframe. Serafina Vance smiled at him. Still working overtime, Mr. Zhao. She too had deliberately stayed late, waiting until every other team member had left. All for this moment. Before entering, she had touched up her makeup, ensuring she was at a perfect 100%. Running a hand through her long, wavy hair, Serafina's voice became even more tender. You worked so hard, but it's dinner time. You need to take care of yourself, Mr. Zhao. Kevin was unfazed. It's fine. I've just got a bit more to finish up. You can go home. He then turned his attention back to his work. A minor setback. Serafina remained undeterred. She glided toward the desk in her high heels, her posture graceful. As if by chance, she leaned half her body lazily against the edge of the desk, creating an impossibly alluring curve at her waist. She leaned slightly closer to her target, her voice now practically dripping with seduction. Mr. Zhao, an army marches on its stomach. You need to eat to have the strength to keep going, and to leave a girl all alone. That's not very polite, you know. Her words finally seemed to have an effect. Kevin stopped typing. He looked up at Serafina, who was now perched on his desk, her body nearly pressed against his. A look of realization dawned on his face. You're right. A flash of triumph crossed Serafina's eyes. The curve of her lips deepened into a more bewitching temptation. In that case, Mr. Zhao, why don't we? Before she could finish, Kevin shot up from his chair. The sudden movement nearly sent Serafina tumbling off the desk. As she scrambled to steady herself, she heard Kevin's voice, rushed and energetic. Thanks for the reminder. I'm going to have dinner with my girl. Work is important, but I can't leave her waiting all by herself. With that, Kevin had shut down his computer and was already rushing out the door. Just as he reached the doorway, he paused and looked back at Serafina, puzzled. Serafina, you not leaving yet? It's dinner time. You should go eat too. Then, another look of realization. Oh, don't tell me you don't have a boyfriend. Man, being single is rough. You should hurry up and find someone. With that final piece of righteous, superior advice, Kevin vanished. Left alone in the office, the star agent of the Quad's marketing department just stared blankly, utterly bewildered. Serafina Vance. With proper coordination in place, Mako Entertainment's 3 departments began to operate with increasing maturity and fluidity. The development of Heavenly Tactics was picking up speed. As the boss, Leo found his workload gradually lightening. But he wasn't entirely free. This week, a string of new invitations had found their way to him. At the university, Dr. Finch had mentioned it to him during a game of chess. Clear your schedule for a day next week. Some of your alumni are now holding official positions in the city and the state. I'll take you to meet them, help you make some connections. From Happy Nest, David Chung had called. Nexus is planning to officially launch Weibo after the national holiday in October. Carl Carlson is planning a business gala, inviting influential figures and industry giants. You and I are on the special invitation list. Even Chloe Chu, the mother of Mia, the little girl he had rescued on the train so long ago, had called. She said Mia had been talking about her big brother and big sister and wondered if the young couple had time to visit. Hanging up, Leo couldn't help but marvel at it all. He hadn't expected to be so busy again. It seemed he was never meant to be idle. But compared to the first 3 invitations, the fourth and final one was the most significant. It came on Thursday evening, as he and Claire were taking a stroll across campus. Claire suddenly remembered something, turned to him, and mentioned it offhandedly. "Oh, right, the Sterling family reunion is this weekend. You're coming with me." Leo's mind went blank, a question mark appearing over his head. "Huh? What would I go there for?" Claire raised an eyebrow, her tone light, but matter-of-fact. "For everyone to meet you, of course, so they can all get a good look at the future son-in-law of the Sterling family. When you run a business at the level Charles Sterling did, your inner circle isn't just composed of talented corporate employees. Family is an indispensable part of the equation. Their abilities might be inferior, but the loyalty and sense of belonging that came from blood ties were far more reliable. The Sterling family reunions weren't frequent. Only 3 or 4 a year were considered significant enough to warrant the title. The main point of these gatherings wasn't to discuss serious business. It was more of an opportunity for the family members to interact, strengthen their bonds, and reinforce a shared sense of identity. In previous years, Claire had rarely participated. She had no interest, but now that she was an adult, and especially as she began preparing to take over Sterling Holdings, she needed to start taking the reins of the Sterling family as well. Charles Sterling was keen on paving the way for his precious daughter, and this family reunion was the most direct way for her to signal her upcoming succession. Basically, Bertha Sue summarized for her boyfriend in a way he could better understand. "I show up, Charles Sterling gives the family a heads up, and tells them they need to start listening to me from now on." She looked at Leo. "Get it?" Leo nodded. "Got it. You're going to announce your takeover. And I'm your +1. Claire nodded in satisfaction, reaching out to pat his head. "Smart boy. That's exactly it." Leo actually had some recollection of this Sterling family reunion. He'd last heard about it during winter break last year. He had returned to Northwood first and was at Pop's Fry Shack with Kevin and Tessa when he called his girlfriend. The two of them had whispered sweet nothings over the phone. Before hanging up, they had even blown a kiss to each other through the receiver. Yes, that thrilling event had taken place right in the middle of the Sterling family reunion. That kiss he'd blown her had been broadcast over the speakerphone, and dozens of Sterling family members had heard it crystal clear. Thinking about it now still made him cringe with social anxiety. The thought of having to meet all those relatives in person made Leo's stomach clench. Do I really have to go? Isn't it a little early for that? Meeting one future father-in-law had nearly given him a heart attack. Meeting dozens of Sterling relatives at once was a bit much. Claire's eyebrow shot up. "Early? Someone's already had his fill of me, and now he thinks meeting my family is a problem," she said, leaning in until her face was inches from his. Her warm breath brushed against his cheek, her voice a seductive threat. Leo stared at her face, a perfect blend of cool elegance and captivating charm, and swallowed hard. "I feel like it's more reasonable to say you've had your fill of me." Claire thought about it. That actually seemed to have some merit. She pouted slightly. "Fine, if you're scared, then don't go." Leo pouted back. "You think that obvious reverse psychology is going to work on me?" Plan A having failed, Bertha Sue decided to deploy her trump card. "You come with me," she whispered, her lips brushing against his ear, "and next time, at home, I'll wear." She finished the sentence in a murmur only he could hear. The air went still for a second. Leo's eyes went wide, and he felt a nosebleed coming on. He shot to his feet, his voice ringing with heroic conviction. "I'll go. What's a family reunion to be afraid of? Of course I'll go." Despite his bravado, Leo still sought out his best friend for advice. Over the phone from the Mako Entertainment office in Portland, Kevin was unconcerned. "What's the big deal? There's going to be like 100 people there. You think anyone will have time to pay attention to you when they're all busy saying hi to each other? Claire and her dad will probably give a speech, but it's not like you, the future son-in-law, will have to say anything. Just find a corner and be a wallflower, bro. It'll be fine." Leo thought about it and realized he was right. There was no need to make a big deal out of it. He'd just go and blend in. Having figured that out, his opinion of his best friend improved slightly. A short time in the Portland office, and he was already getting sharper. He praised him a bit, then asked how things were going at the branch. Kevin's reply was quick and confident. "Everything's great. With that Yvonne Moreau you hired coordinating things, my guys here have all found their rhythm and gotten on track. And that Serafina Vance I told you about, she's especially reliable. Doesn't make much, but she voluntarily works overtime every day. Whatever time I leave, she's right there with me. She even reminds me not to forget about Tessa's feelings. A top-tier employee. Oh yeah, a few days ago, some of our old high school classmates in Portland started a group chat to plan a reunion. Sarah Lynn's in it. She even added me as a friend and was asking about you, haha. On Leo's end, he was intrigued. Oh, so she's studying in Portland too. It had already been over a year since they'd started college. Thinking back on high school, it all seems so trivial now. If it weren't for Sarah Lynn's help, he and Bertha Sue might not have gotten close so quickly. In that sense, he supposed he should thank her. Just then, Claire wandered over. Kevin on the phone? What are you talking about? Leo snapped back to reality instantly. Nothing, he said, then launched into a righteous tirade into the phone. Sarah Lynn? What's Sarah Lynn? The hell with Sarah Lynn? Back at the Portland office, Kevin had just hung up. There was a soft knock on the door, and Serafina Vance came in holding a stack of files. Mr. Zhao, here's the second round evaluation report from yesterday. She glided to his desk in her high heels, her movements graceful. As she placed the files on the table, she leaned forward slightly, intentionally revealing a hint of cleavage. Kevin, his eyes glued to the computer screen, was completely oblivious. Oh, great. Just put on the desk. Thanks for your hard work. He didn't even glance up. Serafina's jaw tightened slightly, but the smile on her face remained. Of course. Well, I'll let you get back to it. She turned and left the office. The moment the door closed, her expression darkened. Her most trusted seduction tactic had failed repeatedly over the past week. It almost made her wonder if she was losing her charm. First, she ruled out the possibility that the Mako Entertainment boss was just a clueless straight man. That left only one conclusion. This man was even deeper than she had imagined. After hearing he had a girlfriend, she had easily managed to get a photo of the girl, Tessa Yuan. She was indeed beautiful, with a rare, gentle, and intellectual grace. A definite plus. But compared to her, the star of the Quad's marketing department, Serafina was clearly superior in terms of looks, figure, and seductive skill. So there was no reason the Zhao character should be able to resist her just for his girlfriend's sake. Unless the one he truly cared for was someone else. An idea sparked in Serafina's mind. She remembered overhearing the name Sarah Lynn from outside the door just now. A high school classmate? Could she be the Mako Entertainment boss's true ultimate crush? She immediately went back to her desk, opened her computer, and started searching. She couldn't find any relevant information on the Quad's network, but on Happiness platform, she found the account of a Sarah Lynn who had graduated from Northwood High. She clicked on the photo album and found her target. She stared. Serafina's brow furrowed again. This is Sarah Lynn? She was even less impressive than Tessa Yuan. She looked short and not particularly attractive. For words came to mind, not even worth mentioning. The Sterling family reunion was on the weekend. On Friday afternoon, after his classes, Leo made his usual stop at the Mako Entertainment headquarters on Komping Road. After another round of hiring, Mako Entertainment had expanded further. The single floor of the building was bustling, with the 20-plus workstations in the main hall nearly all occupied. As Leo walked in, he was greeted by a scene of busy but orderly work. Part of the tech team was coding and testing for Heavenly Tactics, while the rest continued with daily maintenance and new content development for the Battle Through the Heavens browser game. In the art department, everyone was diligently hunched over their sketch pads. The communication between the two departments, once a tangled mess, was now a mature, streamlined system. They followed a detailed project checklist, ticking off completed items, circling those in progress, and starring those requiring interdepartmental collaboration. That was all Yvonne's doing, Wyatt Way remarked as he followed Leo into his office. That girl's really something. Her ideas are smart and incredibly practical. Leo nodded in agreement and asked, "What's the consensus from everyone else?" Wyatt shrugged. "What do you think?" The day a beauty of that caliber joined us. The single geeks in my tech department cracked open 2 cases of beer to celebrate. A bunch of guys from my engineering school heard our company has both Isabella Zhao and Yvonne Moreau now. They're all clamoring for an interview, breaking their necks trying to get in, even offering to work for free. Leo's eyes lit up. Really, the appeal of beautiful women was truly something else. If Isabella plus Yvonne had this effect, what would happen if he hired a few more? Mako Entertainment could probably go public on the backs of employees paying the company to work there. Wyatt eyed Leo's daydreaming expression with suspicion. "Bro, what are you plotting now? You have a seriously evil look on your face." Setting aside the beauty effect, Wyatt's objective assessment was that Yvonne's presence had brought immense improvement to the company. With the self-motivated Yvonne around, even Isabella had stopped slacking off, now happily and miserably joining her in working overtime. The moment Isabella tried to sneak in a game of garden grab, Yvonne would catch her with uncanny perception. "Isabella, no games during work hours." With that time, you could have finished half a new draft. The gaming laptop was confiscated. Isabella clung to Yvonne's leg, refusing to let go, pleading pitifully. Yvonne, please let me play a little more. It's a coffee break. Just 5 more minutes of garden grab. Please, this is really important to me. Wah, you've already pushed me to exceed my quota today. Let the other team members work overtime. They'll do anything. Yvonne glanced at the laptop in her hands, her eyes falling on the garden grab screen. Garden grab? Isabella's spirits lifted instantly. Yeah, it's super fun. You want to play together? I'm a pro at this game. I can teach you. Yvonne shook her head slightly. I played it. It's too simple, no challenge. Before Isabella could protest, Yvonne had already used the trackpad to adjust the crop layout. Isabella, your planting strategy and fertilizer allocation are unscientific. Like this, and here, there. That should save you half a day and optimize your harvest efficiency. Isabella looked, her eyes widening in disbelief. She turned to Yvonne as if she were looking at a goddess. Whoa, Yvonne, how did you do that? Yvonne calmly put the laptop away. If you want to learn, focus on your work first. Turn in 2 more drafts, and I'll teach you. Isabella was instantly re-energized, her fighting spirit maxed out. Deal. She turned and marched back to her desk, ready to tackle more work. In the office, Leo and Wyatt watched the scene unfold. Wyatt's mouth twitched. It's like this every day. Those two get along surprisingly well. One of them isn't that bright, and the other one seems smart, but I think her brain's got a few loose screws too. Leo nodded in agreement. He had the same feeling. Claire's assessment was even more incisive. Isabella is cute and kind. Intelligence unknown. Yvonne is smart and driven. Emotional intelligence unknown. The dumb one and the dumber one. The dream team. If the dream was about hitting rock bottom on both IQ and EQ tests. If those two had a kid together, it would be a lost cause. Leo chatted with Wyatt for a while longer about the new development plans for Heavenly Tactics. With the expanded tech team, development speed had clearly increased. But it was a project that couldn't be rushed. For a game like Heavenly Tactics, every detail and balance issue had to be perfected before launch. The initial player experience had to be as bug-free and polished as possible. After talking shop, just before leaving, Leo remembered the Sterling family reunion this weekend. He humbly asked Wyatt for some advice. After all, the Sterlings and the Weiss were both powerful families. There was surely some wisdom to be shared. After hearing Leo's question, Wyatt thought for a moment and answered honestly. The Weiss and the Sterlings are actually a bit different. In my family, the old man is in poor health, so all the uncles are busy scheming and fighting for power. The Sterlings don't have that problem. Mr. Sterling is in his prime. His authority alone is enough to keep everyone in line. And then there's Claire the Demoness. Claire. Her status and prestige in the family are no joke either. Wyatt then summarized for Leo. So, bro, just go and don't worry. You won't have to lift a finger. If anything does happen, your wife can handle it all for you. Saturday morning, the Maybach cruised along the elevated highway, heading toward the Sterling family estate in the western suburbs. The Maybach was in a good mood. It was a rare treat to have its full complement of 4 passengers. The driver's seat was occupied by the driver and retired Special Forces King. The passenger seat held the head of the Sterling family and current chairman of Sterling Holdings. In the back sat a young couple. All of them were its favorite passengers. It was just that the atmosphere inside the car was a little subtly quiet. The Maybach was curious. It didn't understand what was happening, but it didn't care. It just continued to happily roar its engine, carrying its passengers joyfully toward their destination. Inside the car, seated in the driver's seat, Mr. Joe was under immense pressure. He barely dared to breathe. His face was a mask of calm composure as he gripped the steering wheel, seemingly focused on the road, but his pupils were practically vibrating into afterimages. He had never driven a car this fraught with tension in his entire life. He felt like he was about to have a heart attack. He wanted nothing more than to open the door and roll off the highway, just to escape this terrifying battlefield. In the passenger seat, Charles Sterling was also displeased. The esteemed head of the Sterling family, the chairman of Sterling Holdings, had ridden in his own Maybach countless times, but this was the first time he'd been relegated to the passenger seat. And the reason? To make room for some punk kid, so that said kid could sit next to his precious daughter. Thinking of this, Charles couldn't help but glance at the rearview mirror, his gaze falling on the person in the back. His dislike intensified. He cleared his throat and spoke with authority. Today is a Sterling family reunion. Isn't it a bit inappropriate for this boy to be here? In the back, Leo reacted quickly, nodding in agreement. Yes, bro. Sir, you're right. Maybe I should just head back. Before he could finish, a slender hand pressed down on his, silencing him. He heard the calm, breezy voice of the Sterling family's eldest daughter beside him. The future son-in-law of the Sterling family is attending a family reunion. What's inappropriate about that? The word son-in-law of the Sterling family made Charles's eyelid twitch. Still not giving up, he continued. What I mean is, we haven't laid any groundwork. If someone in the family has an issue, it could get ugly. Claire's eyebrow rose slightly. An issue? Then we'll handle it. The simple sentence dropped the temperature inside the Maybach by 10 degrees. The air crackled with a murderous chill. She glanced at her old man in the passenger seat and asked with a smile, "Does the chairman of Sterling Holdings have an issue?" Charles jolted. He forced a laugh. "Ha ha, of course not. I certainly have no issue." Claire nodded in satisfaction, then turned to her boyfriend with a radiant smile. "See? No one has any issues. The Sterlings are all very reasonable people." Leo wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. "Yes, indeed. Perfectly reasonable." The Sterling family reunion was being held in a villa complex in the western suburbs. The Maybach drove through the community gates. From the back seat, Leo looked out the window, taking in the scenery. The environment was serene and pleasant, with clusters of Chinese-style villas scattered in a tasteful layout. They were magnificent and grand. The sheer size of each property was staggering, easily 3 to 5 times larger than his and Claire's L&S house. Leo couldn't help but show a look of admiration. Charles Sterling, in the front passenger seat, caught Leo's expression in the rearview mirror and allowed himself a hint of reserved pride. "I bought this Sterling estate 5 years ago. It was a considerable expense back then. Now, even if someone had the money, they wouldn't get the chance to buy it." The chairman of Sterling Holdings wouldn't normally bother to mention such trivialities. But in front of his punk son-in-law, it was a different story. He seized the opportunity to flaunt his wealth. "Take a good look, kid. The Sterlings are a powerful family. You'd better watch yourself." Claire, sitting next to Leo, also noticed his admiring gaze. She smiled and took his hand. "Do you like it? If you do, it's yours." With one casual sentence, she had preemptively changed the name on the deed. Charles Sterling. The chairman almost felt his mouth twitch. His fists inexplicably clenched. In the driver's seat, the retired Special Forces king struggled to keep his pupils from quaking. His hands trembled on the steering wheel, and he nearly tore it from its column. Each villa in the complex had its own outdoor parking space. But today was the reunion, and the Sterling relatives had arrived in a variety of luxury cars, filling up all the spots. Fortunately, the complex also had a private, high-end underground garage. The Maybach slowly descended into the tunnel. It drove through the brightly lit, elegantly decorated garage and soon found its designated spot, shutting off the engine. The young couple, along with Charles Sterling and Mr. Joe, got out of the car. They were about to head to the corresponding elevator to go straight up to the villa when Leo's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. It was David Chung. It was probably important. Leo turned to Claire and told her to go up first with her. Big brother. No, her father. He would follow as soon as he finished the call. Claire nodded. "Okay, we're in building 6, 1 unit per floor with 3 elevators. The elevator lobby is just to your right. Don't get lost." Leo chuckled. "I'm not a kid. How could I get lost? One should never tempt fate." He answered David's call in the garage, but after just a few words, the poor signal forced him to walk further out. He found a spot with better reception and chatted with David about work at Happy Nest. David also mentioned the banquet at Nexus after the holiday. By the time he hung up and turned to find the elevator, he was staring at the vast, maze-like underground garage, completely bewildered. He had no idea where the private elevator for Building 6 was. The boomerang of fate had returned with astonishing speed. He wandered around the garage for a while, but couldn't find the place. Just as he was thinking of walking back out to find a signal to call his girlfriend for help, the roar of engines echoed from the garage entrance. Leo looked up to see several flashy sports cars and convertibles speeding in. They even performed a drift in the spacious garage before braking to a stop. A group of more than a dozen young people, both male and female, ranging in age from their mid-teens to their early 20s, piled out of the cars, laughing and talking. All were dressed in flashy, expensive brand-name clothes. The ones in the lead were clearly the core of the group, surrounded by the others like stars. "What do you think? This Aston Martin has some serious horsepower, right? Just got it last month. If the old man hadn't forced me to come to this stupid reunion, I'd be at the track today, racing Lou's kid." His comment was met with a chorus of fawning praise. Leo spotted a boy lagging behind the group and hurried over. "Hey man, excuse me. Do you know which way the elevator for Building 6 is?" The young man, probably in his early 20s, was slightly taken aback, but answered warmly, It's the third entrance on the left, up ahead. You here for the reunion too? You can just come up with us. By the way, I'm Clark Sterling. What's your name? Leo shook his hand sincerely. Thanks, I appreciate it. I'm James Sterling. When out in the world, an extra alias provides an extra layer of security. This was especially true here at the Sterling estate, which felt no different from a dragon's den. So, despite Clark Sterling's warm intentions, Leo didn't hesitate to slip on a new identity. He'd originally planned to use his second alias, Mr. Joe, but the guy had directly asked for his Sterling name, so a quick change of surname was in order. And just like that, alias number 3 was born. Besides, this was his first time at a Sterling family reunion. As the future son-in-law, it was inevitable that he would have to start dealing with the younger generation of his girlfriend's family. It was necessary to hide his identity for now, get to know these young Sterlings, and observe their character and demeanor. So, it was all for a serious purpose. Not just for fun. All right, fine. There was a little bit of fun involved. This whole alias thing was getting addictive. Clark Sterling had no idea that the man he had just kindly offered to guide had promptly conned him. He didn't seem to get along well with the group up ahead and, upon meeting Leo, launched into an enthusiastic, nonstop conversation. From him, Leo easily learned that this Clark Sterling was a third-generation member from a branch family, sharing the same generational name as Claire. Normally, women in large families weren't given a generational name, but the Sterlings were an exception. Or rather, Claire Sterling was the exception. This didn't surprise Leo. The entire Sterling clan depended on Sterling Holdings and his cheap father-in-law. His girlfriend was the chairman's most beloved daughter. If any family elder dared to have an opinion on the matter, his father-in-law would probably have his team of retired Special Forces veterans handle them in minutes. However, despite sharing a generational name, their status and treatment within the family were worlds apart. According to Clark, he was from a distant branch. His father was a distant cousin to Charles Sterling and currently held a mid-level management position in a subsidiary of Sterling Holdings. Clark himself was a senior at East Bay Polytechnic. After graduation, he could probably use his family connections to get a job at his father's company and, after a few years of hard work, take over his father's position. If he wanted to aim higher, to get into Sterling Holdings headquarters, he would have to rely entirely on his own abilities. He would receive no special treatment compared to outsiders. I'm going to choose the second path, Clark told Leo, his voice firm with determination and hope. I'm going to get into Sterling Holdings headquarters on my own merit. I'll show everyone that not all Sterlings are useless freeloaders who rely on connections. I've studied for all these years. I can contribute to the family with my own skills. Leo nodded slightly, a look of appreciation in his eyes. It was rare to see a branch family member with such ambition and pride. The desire to prove himself on his own terms showed that the family, under his cheap father-in-law's leadership, still possessed a sense of unity and a drive to succeed. When my girlfriend takes over, Leo thought, if this kid is suitable, I can recommend him for an assessment. As Leo was pondering this, Clark's enthusiastic chatter continued. And I heard that our family's matriarch in training is preparing to take over soon. When she officially takes charge, she'll definitely make bold changes and bring in a new generation of talent. That should be my chance. Leo smiled and asked casually, how well do you know our family's matriarch? Are you close? Clark shook his head repeatedly. I'm just from a distant branch. How would I get a chance to know her? I heard she's been cold and aloof since she was a child, never mingling with the younger generation. She grew up all by herself in Northwood. The first time she formally appeared at a family meeting was around winter break this year. At this, Clark's excitement flared again. But that one appearance was legendary. Claire Sterling was only 18 at the time, right? She sat down at that conference table, and I think it was over some arranged marriage issue. She just went off, holding court and tearing into all the uncles and elders from the first and second generations. Not a single one of them could even lift their heads. The entire hall was silent. The story spread like wildfire among us younger ones. Our family's heir is a total badass. Leo was momentarily stunned, then it clicked. He remembered. It must have been when he had returned to Northwood first, the time he was at the fry shack eating with his girlfriend on the phone. He knew she was in a family meeting, but he never knew that during that meeting, Bertha Sue had taken on the entire Sterling clan of elders for his sake. Claire had never mentioned it. This was the first Leo was hearing of it. A warmth spread through his chest. He was touched. He heard Clark sigh with admiration. For her to command the room like that on her first appearance. Like father, like daughter, truly. Anyway, I really admire her. But I heard she's dating someone. The reason she challenged the elders at the meeting was for that boyfriend. TSK, I wonder what lucky punk stepped in it to get a girl like her. Leo, snapping out of his reverie, heard the last part and cleared his throat. Ahem. Maybe they're just a good match, fell for each other. Clark shook his head, his tone resolute. Impossible. The man worthy of our Claire, Sterling, hasn't been born yet. That guy is definitely just some punk. Now he wasn't happy. He shot a sideways glance at Clark. Just a moment ago, he was thinking this kid had some ambition and was considering helping him out. But with such a lack of judgment, he might as well forget it. Leo the Hammer Wallace, grudge holder extraordinaire, hereby retracts his offer of assistance. As they were chatting, they reached the elevator lobby in the underground garage. They saw the group of young Sterlings had already filled 2 elevators, the doors about to close. Clark quickly called out, "Hey, there are 2 more of us. Hold up." The young people in the elevator glanced over at Leo and Clark, then laughed dismissively. No room. The distant relatives can wait for the next one. Then they closed the doors, shutting Leo and Clark out. Clark smiled wryly and shook his head, looking at Leo. "Oh well, guess we'll wait for the next one." Leo raised an eyebrow. Waiting for an elevator wasn't a big deal. But there had been enough space, and the tone of the person who spoke wasn't a friendly joke. It was mocking, a clear display of family hierarchy. Of course, Leo the Hammer Wallace wasn't one to hold petty grudges. There was no need to get angry with a bunch of kids. The ones who just spoke are all from the direct Sterling line, 3rd generation, Clark explained to Leo. Their status is much higher than a branch family member like me. Oh, right. At that family meeting I mentioned, their parents were the ones shouting the loudest for Claire to be married off for an alliance. Before he finished speaking, Leo had already pulled out a small notebook and was preparing to write. "What are their names? Tell me one by one. I'll jot them down." Viewing the Chinese-style villas from the outside, as the Maybach drove in, Leo had already been impressed by their grand scale. Now, taking the direct elevator up from the underground garage with Clark Sterling and stepping into the estate's interior, he realized the space was even more extravagant than it appeared. The interior was decorated in a classical Chinese style, antique and elegant, yet magnificent. There was none of the gaudy gold and silver ornamentation of Western architecture, but the complete set of mahogany furniture in the entrance hall alone was probably worth enough to buy a house in the city center. According to Clark, this Sterling estate was mainly used for family gatherings. Charles Sterling, as the chairman of Sterling Holdings and head of the family, only came here once every 2 or 3 months, primarily to handle internal family affairs. Other family members, however, would come and stay whenever they pleased, for vacations or to host parties for guests. As a result, the villa had over 20 rooms, including the master suite and guest rooms. It spanned 3 floors above ground and 2 below, complete with various meeting rooms, studies, a dedicated wine cellar, and a tea room. It was more like a manor than a villa. Listening to Clark's descriptions, Leo nodded and looked around, feeling a sense of awe. As expected of the chairman of Sterling Holdings, his cheap father-in-law's resources were truly formidable. Just this one estate would be difficult for him to afford with his current finances. Of course, that was mainly because most of his assets were currently invested in Happy Nest and the development and maintenance of Mako Entertainment's games, not to mention his shares in Nexus's Weibo project. If he were to liquidate everything on the spot, his personal assets would easily reach 9 figures. And that was just for now. Whether it was his shares in Nexus and Happy Nest, or the future profits from the battle through the Heavens browser game and Heavenly Tactics, his net worth was steadily increasing every day. In the near future, once Happy Nest went public, it was no exaggeration to say he could find himself on the Forbes list, right alongside his father-in-law. Thinking about it that way, the future looked bright. He made a mental note to give David Chung another pep talk. The man needed to work harder. He was in his 40s, the prime of his career. For the sake of his partner's dream of getting rich, surely David wouldn't mind working a little harder and losing a few more tufts of hair. Clark, seeing Leo lost in thought, misunderstood his expression and chuckled. "First time here, James? The first time I came, I wasn't much better. I was completely blown away. But this was all built by our family head, Mr. Sterling, and it will all be passed down to his only daughter. For people like us, we can be envious, but we still have to rely on our own 2 hands to build something for ourselves." Leo nodded in approval, giving Clark a thumbs up. "That's the spirit. Keep it up." Clark grinned. "Thanks. We'll both keep working hard." Leo glanced around the elegantly appointed villa again, remembering his girlfriend's casual remark in the car. "If you like it, it's yours." He couldn't help but rub his nose, feeling a bit emotional. "You should probably just focus on yourself. I don't think I really need to." "Clark, question mark." Leo refrained from explaining the truth to the motivated young man beside him. Instead, he pulled out his phone and sent a message to his girlfriend. "I've made a new discovery." Being a sugar baby is actually pretty awesome. Claire's reply came back almost instantly. A single question mark. Leo smiled, snapped a photo of the grand first-floor hall, and sent it to her with a caption. Father-in-law is a beast. Claire understood immediately and replied, Do you like it? Serve me well, and this entire kingdom will be yours. She even added a beckoning finger emoji. Even through text, her queenly aura was palpable. Leo chuckled and typed back, Your servant obeys. As the young couple flirted via text, Clark happened to glance at Leo's phone screen and saw the contact name for the message. He looked surprised. Berta Su? Is she from our family too? Leo replied casually. Another distant relative. Clark marveled. Our family has a Bertha. I've never heard of a Bertha generation. Ignoring Clark's confusion, Leo read 2 more messages from Claire. Bertha Sue was on the 3rd floor, having a meeting with the 1st and 2nd generation elders. She told him to hang out downstairs for a bit, wander around if he got bored, and she would come find him when she was done. Leo happily replied with an okay. He much preferred wandering around the villa with his alias than being scrutinized by a bunch of Sterling family elders. This was also a perfect opportunity to observe the younger generation of the Sterling family from a third-person perspective. The Sterling estate was so vast that if Leo were to wander around alone, he would likely get lost again in minutes. Fortunately, he now had a free tour guide. Clark, being genuinely kind and enthusiastic, took it upon himself to show his newfound relative around, knowing it was his first time at a family gathering. As they walked through the villa, Clark was impressed and envious to learn that Leo studied at Berkeley. Then he remembered something. Oh, right, our family's heir studies at Berkeley too. Leo nodded, commenting, Yeah, what a coincidence. Seeing Leo's casual attitude, Clark became more earnest, offering some advice. You need to take this seriously. This is an opportunity. She's going to take over the family and Sterling Holdings. So many people would kill for a chance to get to know her. You two are classmates. If you can get on her good side, build a relationship, you could be set for life. Leo thought for a moment and said, Honestly, it's hard to get any closer. Build a relationship. They were already at a negative distance. Any closer, and the 4th generation of the Sterling family would be on its way. While they were chatting, they arrived at a reception hall on the 1st floor that opened onto an outdoor courtyard. They could hear the sounds of laughter and chatter from inside. Leo looked over. More than a dozen young Sterlings, men and women, were scattered around. Some were chatting on the sofa. Others were smoking and joking in the courtyard. A group was playing poker. Clark stood beside Leo, whispering introductions. These are mostly 3rd generation, same as us. A lot of them are from the direct family line. Their status is completely different from ours. Leo nodded, his little black book out again. The ones you mentioned earlier, whose parents wanted to marry off the heiress. Point them out to me. Even among brothers of the same family name, there are distinctions of closeness and distance. In modern times, the class structure within a large family might not be as blatant as in the old days, but it is still clear and distinct. It's never spoken of aloud, but everyone understands the unspoken rules. For instance, the reception hall was divided into several small circles. The ones lounging in the main seats on the sofa were from the direct family line, their every gesture exuding an air of casual arrogance. Beside them, on chairs, sat those of lower status, their expressions cautious as they listened and laughed along. The one in the middle of the sofa playing cards is Spencer Sterling, Clark whispered, pointing discreetly. The one who drove the Aston Martin into the garage. His dad is second in line in the 2nd generation. Even our family head, Mr. Sterling, has to call him second brother. And the one next to him, crossing her legs and smoking a slim cigarette, is Sloane Sterling. Her father is 4th in line and is the vice president of the Southwest branch of Sterling Holdings, practically a regional viceroy. Leo nodded, cross-referencing with his little black book. Right? So their parents were the ones who wanted to marry off the family heiress for their own gain. Clark nodded. Yeah, their parents were the most vocal about it. Hey, why are you writing all this down? Leo replied casually, just taking notes. Standing up for for our family's heiress. I'll settle the score with them when I get the chance. Clark nodded in solidarity. Exactly. Our family has Mr. Sterling leading the way, and Sterling Holdings is thriving. We have such a great platform. We should be using our own hands to build our careers, not selling out the heiress's happiness for profit. It's disgraceful. Leo was nodding in agreement when Clark added, and that punk who came out of nowhere. I don't know how he tricked our heiress. He needs to be dealt with, too. Leo paused, then glanced at Clark. He continued to write in his notebook. Clark, catching a glimpse of the book, was surprised. Hey, why did you write my name down? Leo answered nonchalantly, "Oh, nothing. Just practicing my handwriting." Leo the Hammer Wallace, magnanimous as ever, but number one when it comes to holding a grudge. "You, my friend, are first on the list." As Leo and Clark entered and were talking quietly, they were noticed by others in the hall. One of the young men who had arrived in the sports cars called out to Clark with a grin, "Yo, Clark, took you long enough to get up here. See? This is what happens when you're slow all the time. A lesson for you." Clark seemed used to this kind of treatment from them. He didn't get angry, just smiled good-naturedly. "Yeah, I'll try to be quicker next time." From the sofa, the leader of the group, Spencer Sterling, noticed the person next to Clark and put on an exaggerated expression of surprise. "Hey, who's this extra? Clark, you're moving up in the world, huh? Even you have a follower now. Ha ha ha." His unrestrained laughter triggered a wave of chuckles from the other Sterling cousins. "Clark used to be our follower. A follower with a follower? A mini-follower? Ha 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 ha." Leo wasn't angry either. He watched the scene with an amused smile. As a reincarnator, with the combined mental age and maturity of 2 lifetimes, he wasn't about to be provoked by a bunch of kids. He wasn't a petty person who held grudges. He just happened to have a very, very good memory. All he could say was that these young Sterlings fit the stereotype of rich second and third generation kids perfectly. In any large family, for every brilliant talent like Claire or Wyatt, there were bound to be plenty of spoiled parasites. It was only reasonable. However, while Leo didn't mind, Clark couldn't stand it. He quickly spoke up to defend him. "No, we just met. This is James. It's his first time at the reunion. I was just showing him around." At his words, Sloane Sterling, sitting next to Spencer, looked up. She was a pretty girl of about 20, but her heavy makeup and the slim cigarette between her fingers gave her an air of someone trying too hard to seem mature. She seemed oblivious to this, however, as she elegantly crossed her legs and looked Leo up and down with interest. "James Sterling? We have someone with that name in our family? I've never heard of him." Another young man beside her sneered. Probably a distant relative. Sees a chance to come to a family reunion and shamelessly latches on, even if he's 5 times removed. The other cousins nodded in agreement. As self-proclaimed members of the direct line, their gazes toward Leo became tinged with disdain. Sloane was still intrigued by Leo. "He's quite handsome. What were your parents thinking, giving you a name like that?" Someone else chimed in, "Yeah, James. Why not just call him Bond?" Ha ha ha. Another round of laughter. It seemed the humor of the rich and bored was particularly low. Leo laughed too, because the name James reminded him of a certain earthquake-sponsoring secret agent. Speak of the devil. A set of steady, imposing footsteps approached. Everyone instinctively looked up. When they saw the calm, powerful figure descending the stairs from the 2nd floor, almost all the Sterling cousins shot to their feet. Even Sloane quickly extinguished her cigarette and hid it behind her back. And Mr. Joe. He might seem like just the family's driver and bodyguard, but he was the personal driver and bodyguard of the family head and chairman of Sterling Holdings. A true confidant. His status was such that not only these 3rd-generation kids, but even the core members of the 1st and 2nd generations had to greet him with a respectful nod, especially since they had just been joking about names. And now, the man himself, whose name happened to be Joe, had appeared. The cousins couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Mr. Joe was unconcerned. He had just come down from upstairs. The young miss had instructed him to keep an eye on a certain little idiot and make sure he doesn't get too bored. He was used to seeing these young cousins scrambling to their feet in his presence. He didn't approve of their arrogant attitudes, but he couldn't be bothered to intervene. As long as he took care of the boss and the young miss, that was all that mattered. He gave a curt nod in acknowledgement. He was about to turn and leave to find his charge when his gaze swept across the room. And then, the retired Special Forces king froze. There, standing among the group of Sterling cousins, was a familiar handsome face, politely nodding at him. "Mr. Joe. Mr. Joe. Wait a minute. Bored? Alone? How'd he manage to infiltrate the 3rd-generation Sterling inner circle so quickly?" A giant exclamation mark appeared over his head. Before he could process it and speak, Clark, standing next to the person in question, helpfully introduced him. "Mr. Joe, this is James Sterling. It's his first time here." The words the retired soldier was about to say got stuck in his throat. He was completely dumbfounded. "Mr. Joe." When Mr. Joe met James Sterling, the atmosphere in the 1st-floor reception hall of the Sterling estate seemed to freeze for a moment. The retired Special Forces veteran felt his brain short-circuit. What the hell? Who was James Sterling? He couldn't help but stare blankly at this James Sterling, completely bewildered. The other Sterling cousins also noticed that the formidable Mr. Joe was looking at the distant relative for a rather long time. They couldn't help but ask with concern, Mr. Joe, is everything all right? Mr. Joe finally snapped back to reality. He was about to speak when he met Leo's eyes. The latter gave him a barely perceptible shake of the head, a silent signal. Once again, Mr. Joe swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue and replied calmly, "It's nothing. I just thought this young man looked familiar." He couldn't resist another glance at Leo, his eyes filled with floating question marks. Clark quickly chimed in, "Try to be helpful. Right? James and you, Mr. Joe, you both have such strong names. It must be fate." The other cousins eagerly agreed. Yes. Strong names are good. Powerful. Dignified. Of course, James can't compare to you, Mr. Joe. Your name suits you much better. They laid on the flattery thick, their earlier teasing and mockery instantly forgotten. Just then, Leo also spoke to the retired soldier with a cheerful smile. "I'm new here, just getting to know everyone. Mr. Joe, if you have something to do, please don't let us keep you." Before he could finish, several of the other cousins shot him a glare. "Hey kid, is that how you talk to Mr. Joe? Show some respect." By now, Mr. Joe had roughly guessed what was going on. He nodded calmly. "All right, you young people enjoy yourselves. I'll be on my way." He then turned and left amidst the enthusiastic and respectful farewells of the cousins. The moment he turned away, his pupils began to quake uncontrollably. He had to figure out how to report this to the young miss. The young master was not bored at all. He had effortlessly blended in with the third-generation cousins. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that this group of clear-eyed, foolish third-generation Sterlings was about to have a very bad day. After seeing the retired soldier off, the cousins in the reception hall couldn't help but sigh in admiration. As expected of a military man, his presence is just on another level. So composed, I can't even breathe properly in front of him. Man, when he looks at you, I feel like my legs are going to give out. I can't tell if his pupils are shaking or if I am. Obviously you are. How could Mr. Joe shake? As they were discussing this, Clark leaned over to Leo, his tone filled with envy. "You're a lucky guy. Mr. Joe even gave you a second look. He's Mr. Sterling's right-hand man. If he takes a liking to you, you might get promoted within the family." Leo replied without batting an eye. "You think so? I am pretty likable." It wasn't just Clark. The other cousins in the hall, because of the brief interaction between the retired soldier and Leo, also started to see this James Sterling in a slightly better light. Their tone became a bit more polite. When they learned he was a student at Berkeley, their opinion of him improved even more. Sloane Sterling, whose father was the VP of the Southwest branch, raised an eyebrow. "So you're a top student, huh? You look like a goody two-shoes." She then sneered. "Too bad. I hate smart kids. All they do is bury their noses in books. After graduation, they still have to submit resumes and start from the bottom, right?" Her words were met with nods of agreement from the other cousins. Clark, however, didn't want his newfound friend to be mocked, and spoke up in his defense. "What's wrong with good grades? That's a skill in itself. Our family's heiress is a top student too, right? Valedictorian of Northwood, also at Berkeley. Why don't you say anything about her?" Normally, as a distant relative, Clark's words carried little weight. But this last sentence shut everyone up. No one dared to refute it. Even Sloane was momentarily speechless, waving her hand in annoyance. "Why are you bringing her up? So what if she was valedictorian? It's not that big of a deal." Her voice trailed off, a hint of insecurity in her tone. The other cousins felt the same. It wasn't because of the valedictorian title itself. It was because the Sterling family heiress's status and authority, ever since her stunning debut at the family meeting last winter and her subsequent masterful handling of the Southwest crisis, were deeply ingrained in their minds. Even those who were resentful couldn't find the words to argue. Or rather, they were simply too scared. Of course, there was always one who wasn't. "If you ask me, it's really not that big of a deal." The voice cut through the room. Everyone instinctively turned to look. They saw a young man who had been smoking in the courtyard walk in, an air of calm confidence about him. Northwood is a small, messy place. With our family's influence, rigging a valedictorian title for her would be easy. And as for handling the Southwest crisis, the young man took a casual drag from his cigarette, blew a smoke ring, and smiled faintly, his tone dripping with the superiority of someone who had seen through it all. "Are you guys stupid? You really think a college freshman has that kind of ability?" It was obviously our third uncle pulling the strings behind the scenes, letting her take the credit while he did all the work himself. His words caused a stir among the cousins. They nodded, finding his explanation more plausible. Indeed, that made more sense. Leo glanced at the young man. Clark had mentioned him earlier, Graham Sterling, a direct descendant of the Sterling family. 23 years old, graduated a year ago, and already the deputy director of the investment department at a Sterling Holdings subsidiary. A promising young talent. Of course, his success was largely due to his grandfather's connections. That same grandfather was the family's most senior elder, the one who had been most vocal about marrying off the Sterling heiress at last year's meeting. And also, the number one name on the Never Forgets a Grudge Leo, the Hammer, Wallace's little black book. Although he had relied on his grandfather's connections and network, Graham Sterling had achieved some success as the deputy director of the investment department at a Sterling Holdings subsidiary. Of course, others had offered him prime, collaborative projects out of respect for his grandfather of the Sterling family. But to Graham himself, that wasn't the case at all. He believed it was his own outstanding ability, and that his achievements were well-deserved. Consequently, he had developed a strong sense of superiority and confidence. It wasn't just him. The other young Sterling cousins also held Graham in high regard. Now that he had spoken up, directly questioning the family heiress, his words were met with a wave of subconscious agreement. You couldn't blame them. Although they were the third generation of the Sterling family, with backgrounds and resources far beyond that of ordinary people, they were still just teenagers and young adults. Their perspectives were limited. In their eyes, someone like Graham, who could become a deputy director at such a young age, was already incredibly accomplished. As for someone like the Sterling family heiress, who had taken charge of the Southwest region at 18 and calmly navigated the company through an earthquake disaster, not only averting a crisis, but also winning widespread acclaim. That was simply unbelievable. It was completely beyond their limited imaginations. No matter how they thought about it, it seemed impossible. The only logical conclusion was Graham's analysis. Claire Sterling could not have done alone. The only person in the entire Sterling clan with that kind of decisiveness, skill, and courage was the chairman of Sterling Holdings, the head of the family, their third uncle, Charles Sterling. With Graham leading the charge, the others felt emboldened and began to chime in with their agreement. Spencer Sterling, the one with the Aston Martin, slapped his thigh. Graham's right. I knew it. How could Claire have that kind of ability? If she could handle the entire Southwest branch by herself, what does that make our dads and uncles? A bunch of freeloaders. He burst into laughter, and many of the other cousins joined in. Only Sloane Sterling frowned slightly. She remembered her father, the VP of the Southwest branch, being evasive and tight-lipped when he spoke of the situation back then. It seemed more complicated than they thought. But then she shook her head, dismissing the doubt. No matter what, it couldn't have been Claire's doing. Her father was probably just covering for their third uncle, keeping the secret. The atmosphere in the reception hall became lively and relaxed. With Graham, Spencer, and Sloane as the core, the other cousins began to speak freely. One bragged about getting money from home to buy designer jewelry and bags. Another boasted about how, thanks to the Sterling name, he was treated with respect at the racetrack. He had even crashed another person's car, and they hadn't dared to say a word. His stories were met with cheers and envious sighs. Leo listened patiently. From what he could gather, these Sterling kids weren't truly malicious. They were just spoiled and a bit arrogant, throwing the weight of the Sterling and Sterling Holdings name around. They had little ability of their own, but looked down on everyone else. But it wasn't a major problem. They just needed a little discipline. As he thought this, he diligently recorded all their deeds in his little notebook. And all those who had just spoken ill of his girl, not a single one of them was getting away with it. While Leo was furiously taking notes, he saw Spencer open a laptop, seemingly launching a game. He was talking animatedly with Graham. "You're the man, Graham. The drop rate in that Battle Through the Heavens game is so low, I could never get a full set of gear. But that internal account you gave me is insane. I'm crushing everyone now." Leo's pen froze. He looked up sharply. What was that? Did I just become part of the gossip? Other cousins gathered around, amazed. The Battle Through the Heavens browser game. I play that too. There are internal accounts. A normal person couldn't get one of those. Graham wore a smug expression. Of course a normal person couldn't. I got this from a friend in the Crestview group. He has connections, some ties to Happy Nest. He's trying to suck up to me to getting good with our family. You can play as much as you want. The crowd erupted in another round of envious praise. A certain handsome young man also sidled up, his face full of admiration. That's awesome. What kind of account is it? Let me see. He glanced at the screen, memorized the account ID. Then he pulled out his phone and sent a message to Owen Wu, the tech supervisor at Happy Nest. 3 simple words: handle it. The cousins were still marveling. The name Happy Nest was legendary among them. The Battle Through the Heavens browser game, operated on their platform, was a massive hit nationwide. Many of them were devoted players. But getting an internal account was something no ordinary person could do. Graham maintained a reserved expression. Happy Nest is a major player in the domestic internet scene now, and I hear their internal rules are incredibly strict. A normal person can't get close. My friend from Crestview had to pull a lot of strings just to get a favor from someone in their tech department. Of course, that's already a huge deal. More praise from the cousins. Leo also praised him. Amazing, truly amazing. Then he glanced at his phone. Owen had replied, Don't you worry, sir. I'll find out which one of our bastards did this, and I'll have his hide. Just then, Spencer shouted from the sofa, What the hell? A system pop-up. The account's been banned. Graham was in the middle of his gloating. He froze, then rushed over, panicked. How is that possible? He looked at the computer screen. The game page was locked, and a pop-up window announced that the account had been permanently banned. Graham was stunned, unable to believe his eyes. Shit, how could this happen? Who banned it? He was genuinely furious. He was a devoted player of the game, and this internal account, worth at least 6 figures, was not only fun to play with, but also a major source of bragging rights among his friends and family. Now that it was banned, he felt like he had lost a part of himself. Hearing the murmurs of the cousins around him only made him feel more humiliated. With nowhere to direct his anger, he spun around and glared at Leo. Did you break it? You get close, and the account is gone. What are the odds? Clark quickly jumped to Leo's defense. Hey, don't blame him. The account was banned by the system. James just came over to take a look. What does he have to do with it? Leo nodded righteously. Exactly. It was an official ban. It's not like I'm the big boss of Happy Nest or anything. He paused, then his tone shifted. However, if you really like the game, you should play it properly. Don't just look for shortcuts and exploits. That ruins the fun of the game itself. As he spoke, Leo's gaze swept over the young Sterling cousins in the room. He narrowed his eyes slightly and continued calmly. It's not just about games. It's the same in real life. As members of the Sterling family, you have the backing of the family and Sterling Holdings. You have a platform and opportunities that most people can only dream of. You should cherish that. Be down to earth. Don't take the glory your elders have brought to the family as your own to flaunt. He seemed to remember something else and smiled at the group. Oh, and one more thing. Don't be so complacent and narrow-minded. Just because you can't imagine something doesn't mean your family's heirs can't do it. His words left the third-generation Sterling stunned. When they came to their senses, a wave of derisive laughter erupted. Dude, who the hell are you? A distant relative lecturing us? Sloan couldn't help but chuckle. He even sounds so preachy. Spencer rolled his eyes, trying to act all high and mighty here. Buddy, have you looked in the mirror? Graham's face twisted into a sneer. Sucking up to her now, are we? James Sterling, right? The Sterling heiress isn't even here. If you want to kiss up to her, at least wait until she's around. Spencer roared with laughter. Exactly. Graham's right. When she gets here, why don't you go and tell on us? See if she even acknowledges you. Ha ha. Clark, worried, tugged at Leo's arm. James, just drop it. He was about to say more when a flurry of footsteps echoed from the second-floor staircase. Everyone in the reception hall instinctively turned to look. There, descending the stairs in a neat procession, were the core members of the Sterling family's first and second generations. Their presence was formidable, their aura commanding. The chairman and head of the family was absent, but leading the group was a single, coolly beautiful figure. Her presence alone was enough to make the elders behind her seem like a mere entourage, cautiously following in her wake. A gasp went through the third-generation cousins in the hall. They all scrambled to their feet. Even Sloan, Spencer, and Graham, who had been mocking and laughing just moments before, reflexively straightened up, their faces tight with tension. They could talk behind her back, but when the sole heir of the Sterling family was truly present, the oppressive weight of her aura silenced the entire room. In the dead silence, Claire's gaze swept coolly over her cousins. Then her eyes landed on a familiar figure in the crowd. The Sterling family heiress raised an eyebrow, surprised. What are you doing? Her casual, almost intimate tone left everyone stunned. They looked around, trying to figure out who she was talking to. Then they saw Leo, grinning, wave at his girlfriend. Nothing much, just chatting with everyone. The brothers and sisters here are all really friendly. All the third-generation Sterling cousins were dumbfounded. Inside the grand living room, no one could have imagined that the distant Sterling cousin they'd just been mocking could have any connection whatsoever to the family's sole heiress, the famously aloof and untouchable Claire Sterling. It was just too absurd. It was as ludicrous as the idea that this kid was the secret owner of Happy Nest. The two propositions were equally insane, and yet, the reality unfolding before their eyes was a cruel, Relentless reminder to the younger generation of Sterlings that while this kid definitely wasn't the owner of Happy Nest, he seemed to actually know their family's crown princess. And from the casual, intimate tone of their conversation, it was more than just knowing her. Their relationship was clearly something special. Even worse, before coming to the party today, they had all heard whispers from their parents. Rumors that besides the Sterling family, their uncle, the head of the family, and Claire were planning to introduce someone special, bringing them to a family gathering for the first time. The thought sent a jolt through them. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying speed. Spencer Sterling's eyes went wide. Sloane Sterling's expression shifted, a look of utter disbelief directed at the young man, calling himself James. Graham Sterling's pupils instinctively contracted. As for the other cousins, those who had also connected the dots felt their own pupils begin to tremble. No, it can't be. This guy. He's that guy. Clark Sterling, who had been trying to defend Leo the whole time, was a half step behind everyone else. Seeing their reactions, he was still confused. What's wrong? He cautiously asked one of the other cousins, and after getting the answer, his entire body went rigid. He slowly turned his head back toward Leo. His pupils erupted in a magnitude 8.0 earthquake. Holy shit! At that exact moment, Claire, having finished her meeting upstairs, had come down to the living room and immediately spotted her goofy little idiot swaggering among her relatives. Hearing his bold, self-assured answer, she paused for only a fraction of a second before she'd already deduced her boyfriend's entire thought process. Once she understood, she couldn't help but fight back a laugh. A small smile played on her lips, but she suppressed it, glancing at Leo. And here I was worried you'd be bored. Turns out you're the biggest troublemaker of all. You're such a kid. They sounded like words of reprimand, but there was no bite to them at all. In fact, they carried a teasing, almost flirtatious affection. That last sentence, and one keyword in particular, sent a shockwave through the room. The younger Sterlings felt their scalps tingle, their minds buzzing as if the sky were about to collapse. Hey, kid! Some of them couldn't control their shock and let out an audible gasp. A few swayed on their feet, nearly collapsing onto the sofas. Sloane's face was stiff as she fumbled in her pocket for a cigarette to calm her nerves, but her hand was shaking so badly she couldn't get out. Clark Sterling's eyes were now experiencing a magnitude 12.0 seismic event. The tremors were so intense that, out in the villa's courtyard, a certain former recon soldier taking a smoke break felt a strange sensation and looked back toward the house in confusion. Why do I have such a familiar, almost comforting feeling? It's like our frequencies just synced up. Only the couple at the center of it all seemed completely unfazed. Leo grinned and walked over to his girlfriend's side. I was bored, so I was just looking for a little fun. You're done. Claire glanced at him again, this time no longer hiding her smile. Yeah, all right, let me introduce you. As she spoke, in front of everyone, Claire Sterling reached out and, with an incredibly natural intimacy, took Leo's hand. Her long, slender fingers slid into his palm. Then, under the synchronized, earthquake-level gaze of every person in the room, she casually, yet confidently, closed her hand, their fingers intertwining. She turned to face the first and second-generation core family members, her aunts and uncles, who had followed her downstairs. She smiled serenely. First time meeting everyone, let's get acquainted. This is Leo Wallace. My man, the newest member of the Sterling family. Those last 3 lines hit the ears of every Sterling present like a clap of thunder. Even though the younger generation had already pieced it together, hearing the official introduction still made their eyes twitch and their hearts skip a beat. As for the more seasoned first and second-generation elders, their expressions also grew a little stiff. Standing beside his girlfriend, Leo looked at her aunts and uncles, nodded politely, and offered a courteous smile. Hello, aunts and uncles. I'm Leo Wallace. I hope we'll get along well in the future. The air fell silent for a moment. Just when everyone thought the atmosphere would freeze over, the next second, it was as if a switch had been flipped. The faces of the elder Sterlings transformed, their expressions blooming into warm, welcoming smiles. Hello. So you're the Leo we've heard about. So handsome and distinguished. Our Claire certainly has good taste. She's found a wonderful man. Ha. No need to be so formal. We're all family now, we should be close. If you need anything, just talk to your Uncle Spencer. Yes, you can talk to me, your Uncle Graham, too. Anything you need, Suddenly, the room was filled with hearty, enthusiastic laughter. Their warmth was so genuine, it was as if they were completely different people from the stern, dignified patriarchs they usually were. The living room was filled with a joyful and harmonious atmosphere. The third-generation cousin stared, dumbfounded. What the hell? Is that really our dad? Our uncle? Our great-uncle? Why are they so different from how they usually are? Even Leo was a bit taken aback. He had thought that meeting his girlfriend's extended family for the first time would be a tense affair, that her aunts and uncles might give him the cold shoulder, no better than when he first met his reluctant father-in-law. He hadn't expected this much enthusiasm. It didn't quite match the rumors he'd just heard from Clark and the other cousins. He turned to his girlfriend, a question in his eyes. Your family seems pretty easygoing. Claire raised an eyebrow, her expression saying, of course. I told you, they're all very obedient. Leo's head filled with question marks. Claire blinked, her expression unchanging. Oh, I mean, they're all very reasonable. In reality, however, just a short while ago in the third-floor meeting room, a certain Miss Sterling had offered her aunts and uncles a polite reminder before coming downstairs. Her tone had been friendly and tactful. The general message, however, was, be nice to my man later, and if anyone gives him trouble, don't blame me for giving them trouble. It was a meet and greet filled with warmth and enthusiasm. The event concluded in an atmosphere of perfect harmony and joy. Under the watchful eye of a certain Miss Sterling, the first and second generation elders, their eyes twitching and backs sweating, squeezed out brilliant smiles and warmly shook hands with the new Sterling son-in-law one by one. So young and promising, a true diamond in the rough. I'll have my boys spend some more time with you later. Congratulations, congratulations. The sheer intensity of it all was almost too much for Leo. He found a moment to turn to his girlfriend and whisper, isn't this a little over the top? Did you threaten your aunts and uncles beforehand? Claire's face was a mask of pure innocence. Of course not. I'm not some evil supervillain. Leo eyed her suspiciously, but saw nothing amiss. He dismissed the thought. Right? As Claire was so gentle and kind, she would never do something like that. Perfectly reasonable. It was getting late, almost time for lunch. The group moved, preparing to eat. At least 60 or 70 people had come to the Sterling gathering. Though the villa was massive, the dining room was a bit cramped for that many. Fortunately, the residential community had its own private clubhouse with a 5-star restaurant and professional chefs, providing dining and entertainment services for the villa owners. As they were getting ready to leave, while Claire was out of earshot, Clark Sterling cautiously approached Leo and stammered, Bro. He started to say brother, then instinctively stopped, suddenly unsure of what to call him. Leo just smiled and clapped him on the shoulder. It's fine. Call me whatever you were calling me before. Just think of me as James. The clap nearly made Clark's knees buckle. He felt like crying. James, my ass. You're the damn Sterling son-in-law. Why are you so committed to this bit? He swallowed hard and made a decision. All right, I'll still call you brother. Then he glanced nervously toward Claire in the distance before turning back, his voice trembling with disbelief. Brother, are you really her boyfriend? Leo nodded naturally. Yeah, quite a coincidence, huh? Clark said. Yeah, quite a coincidence. Who the hell could have imagined that he'd come to a family party, bump into some lost guy in the parking garage, and it would turn out to be the future son-in-law of the Sterling family? He thought he was just doing a good deed, helping out a distant relative, showing him the ropes, giving him a glimpse of the true power and prestige of the Sterling Holdings family. Turns out, the entire future of the family might belong to this guy. Right now, Clark could only be grateful. Grateful that he had been friendly and helpful the entire time, leaving a good impression instead of offending him. Wait a second. A sudden thought made Clark's face change. He forced a smile and said to Leo, brother, that whole thing I said earlier about settling scores with some punk, that was just a joke. Don't take it to heart, okay? Leo laughed heartily. Don't worry, I'm not the type to hold a grudge over every little thing. It was just a joke. Why would I take it seriously? Clark breathed a sigh of relief. Then he remembered something else. His expression tensed again as he tentatively asked, So, can you cross my name out of that little notebook of yours? Leo shook his head repeatedly. Can't do that. Then he patted Clark's shoulder reassuringly. I'm just messing around, practicing my handwriting. It's nothing. The reassurance made Clark want to cry again. Oh, well, thanks, I guess. Even though the Sterling son-in-law's tone was friendly and he didn't seem like the vengeful type, Clark couldn't shake the feeling that he was still on some kind of hit list. At 12 noon, the Sterling party moved to the private clubhouse for lunch. In the elegant and grand banquet hall, 6 or 7 round tables were arranged. The family members took their seats according to seniority. Charles Sterling, who had been busy handling some Sterling Holdings business upstairs in the villa, had also arrived. As soon as he entered the hall, everyone at every table quickly stood up to greet him. Charles, Uncle, Mr. Sterling. Charles just gave a cool nod, his aura as imposing as ever. But as his eyes scanned the table of younger Sterlings, they landed on that familiar, infuriating punk kid standing next to his precious daughter. The chairman's eye couldn't help but twitch. Leo politely greeted his reluctant father-in-law. "Sir," Charles snorted, unwilling to acknowledge him. But beside Leo, Claire's eyebrows shot up. Charles immediately felt a pang of fear. He cleared his throat and, with great reluctance, gave Leo a specific nod. "Sit." He glanced at his daughter again, then begrudgingly added, "Just make yourself at home." His words sent another wave of low murmurs through the tables. It was official. He was the Sterling son-in-law, set in stone. When had they ever seen the formidable head of the Sterling family be so polite to a young man? Once everyone was seated again, the banquet began. Waiters continuously brought out platters of delicious, beautifully arranged dishes. The food was exquisite, and the family members at each table opened bottles of fine liquor, the toasts beginning to flow. It was a family gathering, after all, meant to foster closeness and build relationships. Even Charles Sterling, the head of the family, softened his stern demeanor. He raised his glass and announced that today was a family banquet with no rules, and everyone should eat and drink to their heart's content. With his permission, the atmosphere in the banquet hall grew lively and relaxed. Except for one table. The younger, third-generation Sterlings had their own large table. 17 or 18 of them sat there, but compared to the boisterous noise from the other tables, theirs was strangely quiet. The young Sterlings were as silent as cicadas in winter. They kept stealing glances at Claire, seated at the head of the table, and a man beside her, James. No, the Sterling son-in-law. They didn't dare speak. No one even dared to pick up their chopsticks. Leo picked up his chopsticks, was about to grab some food, then paused, looking at the others. "Aren't you guys eating? Why so tense?" Then he gestured warmly. "Come on, don't be shy. Make yourselves at home." The Sterling cousins. They were speechless with indignation. "This is our home, damn it. Why are you the one playing host?" They complained internally, but not a single word escaped their lips. They still didn't dare touch their chopsticks, instinctively glancing at Claire for a cue. Claire raised an eyebrow. "The son-in-law has spoken. You can all start." She paused, her gaze sweeping over her cousins. Her tone was light. "Or is it that none of you welcome the two of us?" Her words landed like a boulder in a pond, nearly causing an explosion. Everyone's face changed instantly. No. Of course not, Claire. What are you saying? Welcome. We're so happy you're here. What are you all waiting for? Eat, ha ha ha. Everyone scrambled for their chopsticks. One of them, in his panicked haste, fumbled with the paper wrapper and nearly burst into tears of frustration. Leo watched amazed. A bunch of young masters and misses. Back in the living room, they had been so arrogant, acting like they owned the world. Now, in front of Claire, they had all turned into scared turtles. The commanding presence of the future CEO of Sterling Holdings was truly terrifying. As he was marveling at this, Claire picked up a piece of braised pork with her chopsticks and casually placed it in her boyfriend's bowl. "Don't just sit there. The chef here is pretty good. Try it." That simple gesture left every young Sterling at the table stunned. A storm raged in their hearts. Holy shit, declared Sterling, serving someone food. Even her own father had never received such treatment. Leo, however, saw nothing unusual about it. He was used to it at home. He casually acknowledged her, picked up the pork, and tasted it, nodding in approval. "It's good." Then he picked up a piece of food, intending to put it in his girlfriend's bowl. "You try some too." A smile touched Claire's lips. She didn't move her chopsticks. Instead, she leaned closer to her boyfriend, tilted her head up slightly, and raised an eyebrow. "You feed me." The words fell. This time, it wasn't just their table. The cheerful chatter from the nearby tables abruptly vanished. The aunts and uncles who had been eavesdropping the whole time froze with their chopsticks in midair. Like their children, their minds were reeling, a single phrase echoing like an explosion. "You feed me." Charles Sterling's hand also paused, hovering in midair. He froze, took a deep breath, and another. He tried to act nonchalant. "What are you all staring at? Eat." Everyone snapped out of it, forcing themselves to act composed, pasting on smiles. Right. Eat. Haha, come on, another drink." The lively atmosphere seemed to return, but every Sterling family member, while trying to chat and laugh, couldn't stop the violent tremors in their eyes. Sitting at a nearby table, a certain retired recon soldier watched with mixed emotions, a profound sense of vindication washing over him. It was the sweet feeling of vengeance. Damn it. Finally, I'm not the only one suffering. Everyone finally began to eat. After a few courses, the third-generation Sterlings at the table had filled their stomachs and calmed their nerves. At the very least, they could now steal glances at the couple at the head of the table without being so shocked that they lost their composure. They managed to limit their reactions to a few discreet pupil quakes. Sloane Sterling stood up, glass in hand, and looked at Leo. She tried her best to appear calm and natural, forcing a smile. "Leo, right? I'd like to propose a toast. First time meeting. What happened at the house earlier? It was all a misunderstanding. We were just joking around. Don't take it to heart." This humble posture was a world away from her usual spoiled demeanor. She wasn't the only one. Beside her, Spencer Sterling also stood up with a strained smile, glass raised. "Right. It was all a misunderstanding. You should have just said you were Claire's boyfriend. We're all very happy for you, huh?" The flippant, arrogant attitude he'd had at the house was gone without a trace. When Claire wasn't around, they could make arrogant remarks and mock her behind her back. But with her sitting right there at the same table, they all tucked their tails between their legs and behaved, terrified of causing any offense. They were consumed by guilt. Seeing this, the other Sterling cousins quickly stood up to offer their own toasts, one after another. They were terrified that their earlier criticisms of Claire would be remembered and reported on the spot by this newcomer. Leo didn't hold it against them. He stood up with a grin, raising his glass. "It's no big deal. I have a bad memory. I've already forgotten what happened earlier." The young Sterlings let out a collective sigh of relief, their faces beaming. Their opinion of him instantly improved. This guy, he had seemed so annoying before, but it turned out he was magnanimous and didn't hold grudges. A decent guy, after all. After the round of toasts, they sat down. Claire, sitting next to Leo, glanced at her boyfriend and asked with casual curiosity, "What misunderstanding? You guys were joking around earlier?" Leo nodded with a smile. "Yeah, quite a few jokes, actually. They were pretty funny. My memory's bad, but I wrote them all down in my little notebook. You want to see?" With that, he casually pulled the small notebook from his pocket, ready to share it with his girlfriend. In an instant, the pupils of every third-generation Sterling at the table exploded. "Holy shit, so much for not taking it to heart. You wrote it all down in a damn notebook." Their scalps tingled. In a panic, they all shot up from their seats again, raising their glasses. "And nothing to see. Ah, Leo's just kidding. Claire, don't look, it's really nothing. Come on, let's drink. Drink. I'll down this one first." A frantic flurry of interruptions followed. Clark Sterling, drenched in a cold sweat, lunged and snatched the notebook from Leo's hand. He turned to Claire with a smile that was uglier than a grimace. "And no notebook. Leo's just joking. He was just using it to practice his handwriting." After a chaotic scene, the crisis was narrowly averted. The young Sterlings at the table slumped back in their chairs, relieved, feeling as though they had just escaped death. They wiped their foreheads, which were slick with cold sweat. Claire finally dropped the subject. She took Leo's hand, preparing to make the rounds at the main table of elders, officially introducing her boyfriend to the core members of the first and second generations. Leo followed her, glass in hand, to the main table. Seeing them approach, all the aunts and uncles at the table quickly stood up with their glasses to welcome them. Charles Sterling was not pleased. He sat there, glowering as his precious daughter stood beside that punk. He had to admit, they did look good together, a pleasing sight, which inevitably made him think of Aragorn and Arwen, which then reminded him of that infuriating cosplay photo from the comic and anime fest. That just made him angrier. To hell with Aragorn and Arwen. He refused to stand, didn't even pick up his glass, and sat there on his throne, putting on the full display of a cold, disapproving father-in-law. Claire's eyes swept over to him. She looked at her old man and smiled. "Mr. Sterling, is there a problem?" At the next table, the retired recon soldier sensed the impending danger. He reflexively started a turn, preparing to flee. Danger! Danger! Level 1 alert. Even if there isn't a problem now, there's about to be. Fortunately, Charles Sterling's own danger sense was just as sharp. Hearing his daughter's sweet, smiling question sent a shiver down his spine. He quickly, yet with practice calm, picked up his glass. Oh no, no problem at all. Still, he stubbornly held on to a sliver of his father-in-law dignity, shifting only half a buttock off his chair as a concession to the punk. Leo, of course, quickly gave his reluctant father-in-law an out. "No need to get up, sir. Please stay seated." With the head of the Sterling family himself raising a glass, the other aunts and uncles at the table were naturally even more attentive and enthusiastic. After the toast, they showered Leo with praise. "So handsome. What a distinguished air. A perfect match for our Claire." This fawning attitude was a far cry from the faces they'd worn at the family meeting when they were clamoring for Claire to be married off in a strategic alliance. On one hand, They were still terrified from the warning Claire had delivered that day, a demonstration of power that had shaken the entire family. They were genuinely worried that one wrong move would result in her digging up their skeletons and airing them for all to see. On the other hand, there was what had happened between April and June. Claire had personally taken charge of the situation in the Southwest, and during that region's disaster, she had not only saved the family's reputation, but had turned the crisis into a triumph, earning widespread acclaim. This had left the Sterling elders both shocked and deeply moved. They had finally developed a genuine sense of admiration and respect for the future heiress of Sterling Holdings. Thus, they had willingly accepted and acknowledged her authority, a position second only to Charles Sterling himself. Right now, the aunts and uncles were praising Leo, but the praise inevitably shifted to Claire. Leo was happy to hear it, proud of his girlfriend. But when he overheard a few of the elders mention her leadership in the Southwest branch and her handling of the disaster, he paused. He glanced at his girlfriend, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Something fell off. He didn't dwell on it. The elders didn't elaborate, so he assumed his girlfriend had simply gone to help manage the aftermath of the disaster. He let go. Besides, even if she had gone to the Southwest before the disaster, it didn't necessarily mean anything. There are always coincidences in the world. Leo shook his head, clearing his thoughts, and smilingly raised his glass to clink with the elders again. However, when enough coincidences pile up, they will eventually point to the one inevitable truth. At this moment, Leo had no way of knowing that someday, perhaps in the not-too-distant future, today's coincidence would become another crucial piece of the puzzle, leading him to uncover the whole truth. And that day was, perhaps, not far off. At the main table, the first and second generation aunts and uncles, having finished praising Leo, moved on to showering Claire with more compliments. Leo listened with a grin, while Claire, used to it, remained unfazed. She took the opportunity to make a few introductions for her boyfriend. This is my second uncle, Spencer Sterling Sr. This is my fourth uncle, Graham Sterling Sr. And the oldest one next to him is my third great-uncle. Leo politely nodded, shook hands, and toasted each of them. As he did, he recalled the names Clark had mentioned, the ones now recorded in his magnanimous little notebook. These men were at the top of the list. Now, he could put a face to the names. Whether he'd hold a grudge, he'd decide later, depending on his mood. The few elders Claire had specifically pointed out beamed with pride. Oh, don't be so formal. We've watched Claire grow up since she was a little girl. We all adore her. Then they heard Claire casually add, for her boyfriend's benefit, yeah, these are the ones who were most eager to marry me off. The sentence hung in the air. The brilliant smiles on the faces of the uncles and great-uncle froze. The air chilled for a second. The retired recon soldier, sensing disaster, once again prepared to flee. Charles Sterling cleared his throat, about to smooth things over. Fortunately, in the next moment, Claire smiled again. Just kidding. It's all in the past. I'm not one to hold grudges. The elders, drenched in sweat, let out sighs of relief and quickly agreed. Right. It's all in the past. Ha ha ha, Claire always so humorous. The elders and the younger generation all joined in the laughter. Claire, smiling, turned to her boyfriend and whispered, write that down in your little notebook. Leo, also laughing, murmured back without missing a beat, already did. What could one say? They truly were the lethal and savage couple. The magnanimous power duo. The topic finally shifted. The Sterling uncles, not daring to linger on the previous subject, turned their attention back to Leo, showering him with warm and caring questions. Learning that Leo was also a student at Berkeley, they were full of praise. A top student. Incredible. After graduation, you must come work at Sterling Holdings. You'll surely make a name for yourself. Sloane's father, the VP of the Southwest branch, thumped his chest proudly. Leo, if you're interested, come try your hand at our Southwest branch. I'll set you up with a good position. I guarantee you'll be living the good life, maybe with 10 or 8 pretty girls working under you. The words slipped out. He had meant to build a good relationship with the future Sterling son-in-law, but his mouth had run away from him, successfully and precisely stepping on several of Claire's landmines. Not only was he trying to lure her little boyfriend away into a long-distance relationship, but he was also planning to set him up with other girls. Claire's eyes narrowed. She gave her uncle a cool, faint glance. Going to the Southwest branch is fine, but he'll need a suitable position. I think the VP of the Southwest branch sounds good. What do you think, uncle? Her uncle froze. Realizing what a stupid thing he just said, he wanted to die. And no, Claire, don't misunderstand. I was just talking nonsense. I've had too much to drink. Ha ha ha. Oh my God. I'm drunk. The next second, his eyes rolled back in his head, and he dramatically slumped back in his chair, unconscious. He was determined not to wake up for the rest of the meal. The other uncles gloated at his misfortune, while simultaneously feeling a wave of relief. Thank God it wasn't them. They wouldn't have handled it any better. The more you say, the more you screw up. They all tacitly agreed to stop talking about business and just focus on drinking. At the head of the table, Charles Sterling cleared his throat, looked at Leo, and said, "As for work, when the time is right, we can arrange for you to come in and get some experience." Coming from the chairman of Sterling Holdings and the head of the Sterling family, this was a significant promise. Although Leo was already the CSO of Happy Nest and the owner of Mako Entertainment, he accepted his reluctant father-in-law's offer with a nod of humble gratitude and raised his glass in a toast. As they drank, a certain Bertha Sue leaned over and whispered in his ear, "Don't worry, I'll help you. Together, we'll take down Charles Sterling." Leo nearly spit a mouthful of liquor right in his father-in-law's face. After the meal, the family returned to the Sterling estate. The first and second-generation elders drank tea and discussed business. The younger crowd either chatted and played cards on the sofa or went down to the entertainment room in the basement to watch movies and play pool. Leo stayed with Claire. They played a few rounds of Brainiac Blitz on their phones, demolishing some middle schoolers in the arena. As evening approached, the elders were planning another dinner meeting, but the younger generation was getting restless. They wanted to go out to a karaoke bar to drink and sing. The elders were lenient and had no objections. Charles Sterling, as head of the family, also approved, telling his daughter and her son-in-law, "Ugh, what's son-in-law?" telling the pump to go with him, mainly because he couldn't stand seeing the two of them being all lovey-dovey in his house. Out of sight, out of mind. But before letting them leave, Charles pulled Leo aside and warned him with a stern face, "Going to a karaoke bar is fine, but you better take good care of my daughter. If anything happens to her, I'm holding you responsible." Leo thought for a moment and answered honestly, "Sir, your daughter is usually the one who bullies other people." Charles paused, then nodded reflexively. "Oh, right." Then he realized what was said and his face darkened again. "Don't talk back. Just do as I say." Still not feeling at ease, he assigned his trusted subordinate, the retired recon soldier, to go with them, just in case anything unexpected happened. On the other side, the third-generation Sterlings were ready to go. In their late teens and early 20s, they had been bored to tears spending the afternoon with the old folks and were now buzzing with excitement. Only Graham Sterling seemed distracted, showing little interest in the outing. It wasn't until he answered a call from a contact named Qingrui that a smile appeared on his face. "Hey, yeah, I'm free now. We're about to go sing karaoke." "Which place?" "The Imperial Loft. You should come. We can talk about that project you mentioned. Get a room. We'll chat." His tone was laced with his usual condescending arrogance. He hung up the phone. At the same time, in a car driving through the city, Zeke K glanced at his best friend. Who was that? That idiot Graham Sterling? In the passenger seat, Qingrui put his phone away and smiled. "Yep, the idiot took the bait. Let's go." To the Imperial Loft. Back at the Sterling estate, the younger cousins, having tidied up, were eager to head downtown. Although the villa complex was in the western suburbs, far from the city center, most of them had driven their own cars, and each of their rides was worth a small fortune. Spencer had an Aston Martin, flashy and loud. Sloane was a bit more understated with a small BMW. Not because she couldn't afford better, but because most of her money went to jewelry and handbags. Graham, who considered himself a man of taste, drove a top-of-the-line Audi A8. He used it to drive to his job at the investment department of Sterling Holdings subsidiary. Anyone who didn't know better might have mistaken him for the CEO. Leo and Claire, of course, took the Maybach. The retired recon soldier had been assigned driver duty again by Charles Sterling. The car had room for one or two more people. Leo turned to the remaining cousins and called out warmly, "We've got empty seats. Anyone want to ride?" Before he could even finish his sentence, the group's expressions changed instantly. No, we'll ride with someone else." Then they scattered faster than rabbits, as if something terrifying was chasing them. Normally, riding with the family heiress and the new son-in-law would be an honor. But after witnessing the couple's magnanimous display at the dining table, they were all thoroughly traumatized. That meal had nearly given them a heart attack. Who knew what kind of new offenses would be logged in that death note during a car ride to the city? Clark was just a little too slow to escape. He was trying to sneak away along the wall when Leo spotted him and waved enthusiastically. "Clark, you don't have a car, right? Come on, ride with us." Clark pretended not to hear. But in the next second, Claire's gaze fell on him, and she smiled. "That's right. Cousin Clark, if you don't mind, please join us." Now he couldn't ignore them. Clark slowly, stiffly, turned his head, and forced a smile that was uglier than a grimace. "I don't mind. I'm coming." He trudged toward the couple, his steps heavy. To the other cousins watching from a distance, his silhouette seemed to carry a tragic, self-sacrificing heroism. They looked on with pity. Unexpectedly, Leo glanced at the Maybach's interior. There's still room for one more. He turned and called out to the distant group again. "Anyone else need a ride?" The words were like a summons from the Grim Reaper. The cousins who hadn't gotten far enough away scattered again, breaking into a full sprint. One of them tripped and face-planted on the lawn, but he didn't even cry out in pain, just scrambled back up and limped away. Leo was baffled. Why are they running so fast? Don't you Sterlings like riding in Maybachs? Claire nodded slightly, casually making something up. We're in the back. A third person would be inconvenient. They probably don't want to interrupt our private time. Leo looked at the fleeing figures and said with admiration, "How thoughtful of them." He pulled out his little notebook. "So thoughtful. I'll make a note of it." The engine rumbled to life. The car pulled onto the road. The Maybach was curious. There were 4 people when it arrived and 4 when it left, but the passenger in the front seat had changed. This one was younger. It hadn't seen him before, but for the first time, it had met someone who was as skilled at acrobatics as its favorite driver. This one might even be better. Very interesting. The Maybach liked to watch. It would watch some more. The Maybach. Underscore? Clark himself didn't want to do it, but he couldn't help it. The retired recon soldier was driving. In the back sat the Sterling heiress and the Sterling son-in-law, the magnanimous couple, and he, the warmly invited passenger, was in the front seat. He had been terrified from the moment he got in, not daring to breathe, his mouth clamped shut, determined that silence was the safest policy. But while his mouth was shut, his eyes inadvertently caught the scene in the rearview mirror. The couple sat in the back, not talking much. They were just leaning against each other naturally. The Sterling heiress was casually playing with her boyfriend's fingers, then placed her hand on his, their fingers intertwining. A distant Sterling relative had never seen anything like it. Clark's pupils immediately erupted in a violent earthquake. He instinctively turned his head and saw the recon soldier next to him also experiencing a seismic event. Their eyes met. The recon soldier paused, then felt a strange sense of admiration for the young man. "Not bad, kid. We're on the same wavelength." "Cousin Clark, you're at East Bay Polytechnic, right?" Claire's casual question came from the back. "About to graduate?" The question snapped Clark back to reality. He straightened up. "Why, yes. I'm looking for an internship." Claire nodded, then asked, "Where are you planning to go next? Do you have a plan?" Clark chose his words carefully. "Edo. My dad want me to go to his branch office. But I personally want to try to get into the Sterling Holdings headquarters on my own." Before he could finish, a voice from behind interrupted him. "Are you interested in working for me?" The question was light, but it made Clark freeze. He whipped his head around, staring at Claire, unable to believe his ears. Claire simply continued in a calm, casual tone, "I'll be taking over the family business soon, but I'll be starting from the bottom up. So your position won't be very high, and the work will be hard. If you're not willing, it's okay to refuse." Before she could finish, Clark cut her off eagerly. "I am willing. Hard work is fine. I can handle it. I just never thought that you would choose me." It was hard to describe the excitement Clark was feeling. Forget the fact that Claire had achieved such incredible things for the family and the company over the past 6 months, making her a leader anyone would be loyal to. This was the future head of the Sterling family. To be able to work by her side meant a future with limitless potential. So many of the other Sterling cousins, who had once looked down on her, would kill for such an opportunity. Clark had never in his wildest dreams imagined that such a chance would fall into his lap, a distant relative from a branch family. Seeing Clark's excited and flustered expression, Claire smiled. "It wasn't a random choice. I looked through the family register and saw your file. Your grades and internship history are a cut above everyone else's. You just lacked an opportunity. The Sterling family I'm going to lead won't be based on direct or branch lineage, but on ability. Capable people will never lack for opportunities." As she spoke, Claire's tone was no longer as cold as it had been at the villa. It was tinged with a faint smile. "Also, don't call me heiress. Just call me Claire. You've probably forgotten Cousin Clark, but when I was little, I visited the Sterling estate here, and you took me to fly a kite. I still remember." Clark was stunned, muttering, "Right, flying kite. I thought you had forgotten long ago." Beside her, Leo chimed in with a relaxed smile. "Clark's a good guy. When I was lost in the parking garage earlier, he was the one who brought me upstairs and showed me around." Coming from Claire's boyfriend, this was a further stamp of approval. Listening to the couple's words, Clark felt a strange warmth in his eyes. He fought to control his emotions, but his voice still trembled. "Thank you." As a member of a branch family, No one understood better than him how important, how surprising, and how precious this opportunity was. At this moment, he was incredibly grateful. Grateful that he had kindly helped someone find their way. Grateful that he had accepted the invitation to get into this Maybach. Perhaps this would be the most important turning point in his life. By the way, why was Cousin Clark's name the very first one you wrote in your notebook? Claire suddenly asked her boyfriend. Leo perked up and pulled out the notebook. All right, let me tell you all about it. He was planning to settle a score with me. 1 second, Clark was fighting back tears of joy. The next, he was scared out of his mind, tears of terror streaming down his face. Wait a minute. Miss Sterling, I can explain. The turning point of his life, times. The end of his life, square root. Half an hour later, the Sterling caravan entered the city. It wasn't long before they arrived at their destination, a karaoke bar called the Imperial Loft. The name sounded quite grand. In this era, it seemed every karaoke bar in the city liked to use words like emperor or dynasty in their names to sound impressive, like the Dynasty Lounge that Leo and Claire had visited last year. In the car, Clark, sitting in the front passenger seat, happened to bring this up, enthusiastically sharing some local lore with the couple in the back. It was last year, around November. The most popular place at the time, the Dynasty Lounge, had this big incident. Someone was forcing girls into illegal activities, but they ended up messing with the wrong people. The entire gang got completely wiped out. The story spread like wildfire through all the social circles in the city. They say it was 2 students, a guy and a girl, who did it. They were incredible. People started calling them the real-life Aragorn and Arwen, out dealing justice. Ha. Clark was in high spirits, laughing heartily. In the back seat, Leo nodded and casually added, right? That was us. Clark's laughter died in his throat. He turned to stare blankly at Leo and Claire. Question mark. Leo pointed to himself. Aragorn. Beside him, Claire gave a slight nod. Arwen. Clark. His brain felt like it was short-circuiting. He stammered, why you two? He collected himself and shook his head with a laugh. No, you must be mistaken. Besides the couple, another guy showed up later who was even more amazing. Took on more than 10 guys by himself like some kind of special forces soldier. Before he could finish, Leo pointed at Mr. Joe in the driver's seat. Yep, the soldier. Mr. Joe turned his head slightly, giving Clark a calm, reserved nod of acknowledgement. Clark. One moment he was enthusiastically sharing a story. The next he was completely dumbfounded. His world was spinning. Who the hell would have thought? The legendary couple from last year's rumors, the main characters of the story, were sitting in the same car as him. After managing to digest this shocking revelation, Clark rallied his spirits. Right, speaking of Aragorn and Arwen, I heard at school that there was a couple at the Comic and Anime Fest this June who cosplayed as them too. He was about to share another piece of gossip with a smile, but someone in the back had already nodded. Oh right, that was also us. He pointed to himself again. Aragorn. Claire nodded again. Arwen. As the smile froze on Clark's face, Leo kindly added, we didn't bring the Great Eagle. Come visit our place sometime, I'll show you. When a Maybach came to a stop in the back parking lot of the Imperial Loft, the lethal and savage couple had already gotten out, holding hands and strolling into the KTV. Clark remained in the front passenger seat, stunned for a long time. Beside him, the retired recon soldier looked at the young Sterling with sympathy and handed him a bottle of eye drops, speaking with the wisdom of an experienced veteran. You'll get used to it. Protect your eyes. By the time Leo's group entered the Imperial Loft, the other third-generation Sterlings had already arrived. Spencer and Sloane had booked the largest private room. The group was lounging on the sofas, shouting over each other to pick songs and grab the microphones. In this regard, they weren't much different from regular college students. The only difference was that Spencer and Sloane had initially planned to order 10 bottles of expensive imported liquor. But Claire's gaze swept over them, and she said lightly, it's not easy for our elders to earn money. It's not good to be so extravagant. If anyone else had said that, Sloane wouldn't have bothered to listen, and Spencer probably would have exploded. But coming from Claire, these spoiled third-generation kids didn't dare utter a single word of protest. They meekly ordered a few cases of Corona, probably the watery, tasteless kind. Then they started singing, and those who couldn't get a mic played pool on the side. The atmosphere quickly became lively. These Sterling kids might not be good for much else, but they were experts at having a good time. They were masters of dice games, and they could all carry a tune. A duet by Spencer and Sloane earned a round of applause from the room. Leo and Claire sat to the side, watching the show. Leo casually remarked to his girlfriend, your cousins aren't bad people at heart. They're just spoiled. Claire raised an eyebrow in agreement. With a little discipline, they could be whipped into shape. And if teaching doesn't work, A good beating should do the trick. Her view was identical to Leo's. As expected of the lethal and savage couple, their minds worked in the same way. In the private room, the young Sterlings were drinking, singing, playing dice, and shooting pool, having a great time. No one noticed that Graham, who had seemed uninterested from the start, had slipped out of the room. He walked down the hallway of the Imperial loft, rounded 2 corners, and arrived at the door of another private room. He pushed it open and walked in. Inside, Ching-Rui, with a beautiful woman on each arm, looked up and immediately stood up with a wide smile. "Young Master Sterling, you're here. Come in. I've been waiting for you forever. It's my treat tonight. Whatever you want to drink or play, just say the word." Meanwhile, back in the other room, Claire's phone had just died. She had a charger, but couldn't find it in her bag. It must have been left in the Maybach. Leo, being the perfect boyfriend, immediately stood up. "You stay here. I'll go get it for you." His thoughtful gesture earned him a blown kiss from Claire. "Come back quickly. I'll be waiting." That one blown kiss instantly froze the noisy room for a full 3 seconds. Sloane, who was in the middle of a song, her voice trembled and went off key. Spencer, who was shaking a dice cup, nearly sent the dice flying. Only Clark remained unfazed. He calmly picked up the bottle of eye drops Mr. Joe had given him, tilted his head back, and squeezed a few drops into his eyes. "It's going to be a long life. My eyes really do need good care." Leo, on the other hand, was completely unconcerned. He gave his girlfriend an okay sign, walked to the door, and casually pushed it open. Inside the private room, Graham Sterling, welcomed with effusive warmth by Ching-Rui, had made himself comfortable on the sofa. He propped his feet up on the coffee table and, with practiced ease, wrapped his arms around 2 beautiful women. The woman on his left giggled and brought a glass to his lips. "Young Master Sterling, have a drink to wet your throat." The one on his right thoughtfully offered him a piece of melon on a toothpick, feeding it to him personally. "Try some fruit, it's so sweet. If it's not sweet enough, I can feed it to you with my mouth." It was treatment fit for an emperor. On top of that, Ching-Rui and the other guy, Zeke K, were waiting on him hand and foot, showering him with praise. This was a far cry from the reception he had received in the other room with his cousins. Over there, everyone's attention had been focused on Claire and her new fiancé. Even though the 2 of them were sitting in a corner, their presence alone made them the unspoken center of the room. This had been incredibly annoying for Graham, who was used to being the center of attention. Here, however, he finally felt like he was getting the treatment he deserved. Tasting the fruit fed to him by a beautiful woman, a satisfied and comfortable expression spread across his face. This is how it should be. Wherever he went, he, Graham Sterling, should be the star, admired and sought after. The moment Claire and that damn Leo Wallace showed up, his status as a direct Sterling descendant had somehow been diminished. But here it was different. Ching-Rui, from the Crestview family, was a somebody in the city's social circles. But the Crestview group was nothing compared to the Sterling family and Sterling Holdings. So when he arrived, he was naturally the top dog, and they had to treat him with respect. Of course, Graham wasn't stupid. He knew Ching-Rui was being so attentive because he wanted something from him. The Crestview group had some projects they wanted to collaborate on with the Sterling family, and they were trying to use him, the deputy director of the investment department at a Sterling subsidiary, to get their foot in the door. If they could latch onto the Sterling family and Sterling Holdings, Crestview would benefit immensely. But by the same token, as long as they were smart about it and made him a good offer, he wouldn't mind helping them out. After all, a successful partnership would look good on his resume. And if he could slowly bring the entire Crestview group under his influence, he could prove to the Sterling family and the entire business world that Claire wasn't the only capable one in the family. He, Graham Sterling, was even better than her. After another toast with Ching-Rui and Zeke, the cold, expensive liquor soothed the frustration and resentment that had been building up inside him all day. He felt like he had finally let out a long-held breath. Ching-Rui, observing his expression, asked with a smile, "What's wrong? Did something happen earlier? You don't look too happy." Zeke chimed in, "Yeah, who would dare to piss you off? Tell me, and I'll go take care of him for you." The flattery was comforting, but Graham just snorted derisively. "The person who pissed me off is out of your league." He didn't mention the gathering with his cousins, just casually talked about the family party, about how the high and mighty family heiress had brought her fiancé home to make an official announcement. He omitted the embarrassing detail that he had been too intimidated by their presence to say a word. His tone was full of disdain for Claire and mockery for her new fiancé. Graham spoke dismissively, but Ching-Rui was paying close attention. "The Sterling heiress. Her name is Claire Sterling, right? Chairman Sterling's only daughter. I heard she's a great beauty and that she was supposed to be engaged to Wyatt Way from the Way family in D.C. Zeke slapped his forehead, as if in sudden realization, and laughed. What a coincidence! Wyatt Way and Qingrui and I grew up together. We were practically childhood friends. By that logic, we could even call the Sterling heiress sister-in-law. Huh. But Graham sneered. The Way family from D.C.? Who do they think they are? The Sterling family's heiress isn't someone just anyone can have. Although he resented Claire, as a Sterling, he still had a sense of family pride. He felt that their most precious princess shouldn't be given away so easily. Thinking about it made him even more annoyed with that James. No, with that Leo Wallace guy. Who the hell does he think he is, being the Sterling son-in-law? From Graham's grumbling, Qingrui pieced together the amusing story of the fiancé using an alias to disguise himself. He wasn't particularly interested, but he did make a mental note of the name Leo Wallace. After all, he was the future son-in-law of the Sterling family. If he could get to know him, it could be hugely beneficial. What's more, the fact that he used a fake name suggested he was a playful type. And that kind of person, Qingrui was an expert at handling. Still, James Sterling. It was a fake name, but it reminded him of another guy he'd met at the Comic and Anime Fest a few months ago, one of the few people who had ever managed to humiliate him. Mr. Joe. He remembered the name clearly. If he ever got the chance, he would make that guy pay. A cold glint flashed in his eyes, but he quickly pushed the thought aside. He looked at Graham with a hint of contempt. He gets fooled by a simple fake name. And he calls himself a young master. This direct descendant of the Sterling family is just an idiot. The drinking continued. After finishing a bottle of liquor, Graham was getting drunk, his words becoming more reckless. Qingrui and Zeke exchanged a knowing look. Zeke stood up with a grin. Wait here. I'll go get a couple more bottles. He left the room, went to the front desk, and ordered 2 more bottles of liquor. As he was walking back down the hallway, he glanced up and saw a figure in a black hoodie and jeans, talking on the phone and heading toward the restroom at the end of the hall. He wasn't interested at first, but the voice on the phone sounded vaguely familiar. He looked again. The person was about to disappear around the corner, but just before he did, Zeke got a clear look at his profile. Zeke's eyes widened. A surge of anger mixed with ecstatic joy rushed through him. Mr. Joe. Even though the guy had been wearing a mask at the convention, only showing half his face, Zeke would never forget it. You had a path to heaven, but you chose the road to hell. I finally caught you. He still had the big fish, Graham, to deal with in the room, so he knew he had to prioritize. But he couldn't let this bastard get away. He pulled out his phone and called his men who were nearby. The call connected, and the obsequious voice of his subordinate came through the line. Zeke stood in the hallway, staring intently at the corner where the man had disappeared, a savage grin spreading across his face. Hey, stop screwing around and get in here. I need you to take care of someone for me. Leo left the karaoke room and pulled out his phone to let Mr. Joe know he was coming to the car to get something. He walked through the winding hallways of the Imperial Loft, talking as he went, nearly getting lost again. He finally found the back exit at the end of a corridor. He told Mr. Joe, be right there, and quickened his pace. As he passed an intersection, he felt a strange sensation, as if someone was watching him. He sneezed. He rubbed his nose, puzzled. Was someone thinking about him? An enemy? A rival? He thought about it, then shook his head. He, the great Leo Hammer Wallace, was a kind and upstanding person. He didn't have enemies all over the world. Any trouble like that was Kevin Zhao's or Mr. Joe's problem. It had nothing to do with him. It must have been his imagination. With that, Leo walked briskly toward the back exit. Outside was a parking lot. In front of the dark Maybach, not far away, the retired recon soldier was waiting by the door. Leo waved. Mr. Joe. He walked over. Mr. Joe, having been notified by phone, was already holding the charger that had been left in the back seat. Leo took it with a word of thanks. Mr. Joe smiled calmly and waved it off. It's nothing. You can go back in. If you or Miss Sterling need anything, just call me. I'll be waiting here. Leo chuckled. What could possibly happen to us? We're not kids. We don't go looking for trouble every day. Mr. Joe. He looked at the Sterling's son-in-law with an incredibly complex expression. Do you have any idea what you and Miss Sterling are capable of? Are you really that clueless? A normal person wouldn't need such a reminder. This was a major city. Ordinary people didn't just stumble into danger. But the retired recon soldier had experience with his Miss Sterling and her fiancé. He had heard plenty of reports from his old subordinate, Captain Xing, about the glorious exploits of the trouble magnet couple. The stories were enough to give a man a heart attack. These two were walking disasters. They attracted trouble wherever they went. The thought alone was depressing. Being a Sterling bodyguard was a tough job. Leo didn't know what Mr. Joe was thinking. Seeing his long-suffering expression, he assumed he was worried about something else and asked, "Mr. Joe, just wave his hand. It's nothing. Everything's fine, really." But his voice was heavy with weariness. Since he wouldn't say, Leo didn't press. He took the charger and prepared to head back inside. Before he left, he noticed Mr. Joe was only wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt and jeans. "Mr. Joe, you shouldn't stand out here. It's cold tonight. Get in the car and turn on the heat." Mr. Joe smiled. "I will in a bit. I'm just getting some fresh air." Leo nodded. He thought for a moment, then took off his own black hoodie and handed it to the soldier. "It's hot in the karaoke room. I don't need this. If you don't mind, put it on so you don't catch a cold." A retired recon soldier, of course, wasn't afraid of a little cold. But the kind gesture from the Sterling son-in-law was touching, and he accepted it. "Thank you." Meanwhile, Zeke K returned to the karaoke room. Inside, a drunk Graham Sterling was singing with a beautiful woman in each arm, having the time of his life. Ching Rue sat beside him, smiling and keeping him company. Seeing Zeke return, Ching Rue shot him a questioning look. Zeke quietly sat down next to him and whispered, "I just saw the guy from the comic and anime fest." Ching Rue's eyes sharpened. "Mr. Joe." He lowered his voice. "Are you sure you weren't mistaken?" Zeke sneered. He was wearing a mask last time, not a full-face helmet. Besides, he was on the phone just now. I'd recognize that voice even if he was turned to ash. Ching Rue nodded, glancing at the oblivious Graham. "Our business with Sterling is the priority tonight. We need to lock him down. No distractions." Zeke nodded. "I know. That's why I didn't go myself." He grinned savagely. "But I called Bolt and the guys. I told them to go first, to block him and teach him a lesson." Ching Rue thought of something else and frowned. "Bolt and the guys have never seen this show guy. Did you give them a clear description?" Zeke was confident. "I told them everything. Early 20s, jeans, and a black hoodie. When I do something," he said, "you can rest assured." Ching Rue finally looked satisfied, a cruel glint in his eyes. "Good. Let that Mr. Joe find out what happens when you cross me." Leo returned from the parking lot with the charger. Having given his jacket to Mr. Joe, he felt a bit cold in just his white t-shirt and wanted to get back to the room quickly. He was about to speed up when he heard the sound of hurried footsteps ahead. He looked up and saw 6 or 7 burly, aggressive-looking men striding toward him, their eyes scanning the area as if searching for someone. They saw Leo, and their sharp gaze swept over him. Noticing he was only wearing a white t-shirt, they relaxed their aggressive posture slightly, but the leader still barked, "Hey kid, you seen a guy in jeans and a black hoodie?" Leo paused, then shook his head honestly. "No." Hearing this, the thugs grew restless. "Damn it, where'd he go? All we know is what he was wearing and that his name is Zhou Jun. How are we supposed to find him?" Leo overheard this and helpfully offered, "Oh, you're looking for Zhou Jun? He's in the back parking lot." The thugs were overjoyed. "The back lot? Let's go." They rushed toward the back exit, and as they passed Leo, one of them even said a polite, "Thanks." Leo watched the menacing group leave, a small smile on his face. He turned and walked back to his karaoke room as if nothing had happened. Back in the room, he handed the charger to his girlfriend on the sofa. Claire looked up. "What took you so long?" Leo waved it off. "Nothing, just chatted with Mr. Joe for a bit." He paused, then added, "And I helped someone with directions." Claire was puzzled. "Directions?" Leo rubbed his chin. "Yeah, to a dead end, I think." The Imperial Loft, back parking lot. With a thunder of footsteps, Bolt and his crew burst out of the back door, their eyes scanning the lot. Soon, they spotted a man standing by a car, smoking. Jeans, holding a black hoodie. It all matched. He just looked a bit older than his early 20s. Bolt roared, "Hey you, the one smoking." The retired recon soldier, about to finish his cigarette and get back in the car, looked up, startled. He saw the group of thugs at the back door. "Me?" Bolt shouted, "Yeah you. What's your name?" The retired recon soldier frowned slightly. "Zhou Jun. Is there a problem? Did you mistake me for someone else?" It all matched. The thugs under Ching Rue and Zeke's command broke into grins. Bolt, the leader, rolled up his sleeves as he and his brothers slowly surrounded him, a sneer on his face. "No mistake. We're looking for you. So you're the famous Zhou Jun, huh? You look older than I thought." After the 3rd bottle of liquor, Graham Sterling was completely drunk. The hosts, Ching Rue and Zeke, with great care and concern, helped him out the door and arranged for a driver, instructing him to make sure young Master Sterling got home safely. As they watched the car drive away, a triumphant smile spread across Zeke's face. Done. The great Sterling family. Not so great after all. Qingrui also smiled, a cool, confident expression on his face. These kids from big families coddle their whole lives. They're all the same useless trash. They think they're above everyone, but one day, a dark, vicious look crossed his face. I'll make them all kneel and lick my shoes. Graham was one of them. And so was Wyatt Way from D.C. He had heard that Wyatt had returned to the city at the beginning of the year, and he had hoped to get closer to him, to build a relationship that would allow his family to latch onto the Way family's influence. But Wyatt had shown no regard for their old friendship. They had grown up together, yet for the past 6 months, his every invitation had been rejected. The last time they had even seen each other was half a year ago at the East Bay Financial University anniversary celebration. He tried to introduce him to some girls, but Wyatt had pretended to be uninterested. Hypocrite, Qingrui sneered. These rich kids were either arrogant or hypocritical. Wyatt Way had his family's backing, so he could afford to be arrogant. But Qingrui wasn't limited to just one option. The Way family's power was concentrated in D.C., and the old man's health was failing. He might not have many years left, but the Sterling family was different. The Wys were in the north, the Sterlings in the south. Charles Sterling's name was renowned throughout the entire southern province, a golden brand. Now that he had a connection to Graham Sterling, he had a foothold in the family. With that golden brand behind him, he had a lot more room to maneuver. The more he thought about it, the more satisfied he felt. He turned and clapped Zeke on the shoulder. Let's go. Back to the room. Let's have a drink to celebrate. Zeke grinned. Not so fast. There's still one more piece of good news. Qingrui paused, then realized, and a smile spread across his face as well. Right. There's still that Zhou Zhan. Call Bolt. Tell them to bring the kid over. We need to catch up with him. The words were light, but his smile revealed a chilling glint. Zeke had already pulled out his phone and dialed his subordinate's number. Ring, ring, ring. After a long wait, the call finally connected. Zeke, annoyed, barked into the phone. Are you deaf? Why didn't you answer? Qingrui, in a good mood, was about to tell him to calm down, but he saw Zeke's expression suddenly change. Hello, you're not Bolt. Then, after hearing something unbelievable from the other end, Zeke's eyes went wide. What? The police station? Qingrui, standing beside him, was stunned. The police station? The Sterling cousins' gathering came to an end. They said their goodbyes and went their separate ways. Clark, full of gratitude, bid farewell to Leo and Claire and hailed a cab home. The couple waited for a while in the back parking lot of the Imperial Loft. Finally, the retired recon soldier arrived late with the Maybach. They got in the car, and Claire asked curiously, the police station? In the driver's seat, mister. Zhou steered the Maybach out of the parking lot and onto the road. Hearing his missus' question, he explained apologetically. Some people were causing trouble earlier. I handled it and took them to the station. The trip back and forth took some time. The delay wasn't from handling the people. It was from a travel time. The former took a total of 15 seconds. The latter, a 20-minute round trip. The combat prowess of a retired recon soldier remained unfathomable. Claire wasn't concerned about the wait. She was just surprised that Mr. Zhou would run into trouble. You have enemies too, Mr. Zhou. Mr. Zhou himself was baffled. I do, but they're not usually this pathetic. They were too weak. It wasn't even a warm-up. Claire frowned, then, as if remembering something, turned to her boyfriend, her eyes narrowing. Does this have anything to do with you? Leo looked utterly righteous. Of course not. Leo Wallace never makes enemies. A wife knows her husband. That night, after the couple returned to the LNS house, showered, and were lying in the master bedroom bed, Claire rolled over and sat on top of him. Leaning close to his ear, a half-smile on her face. Confess. What really happened? The warm breath from her lips tickled his ear. Leo instinctively turned his head, playing innocent. I already told you. It had nothing to do with Leo Wallace. Claire's lips twitched. It had nothing to do with Leo Wallace. But what about Leo Wallace's alias, Mr. Zhou? He was caught. It had to be said, Bertha Sue's understanding of Leo Hammer Wallace was profound. Leo scratched his head. Oh, well, it might have a little something to do with him. Claire was exasperated. She playfully bit his earlobe as punishment, then asked who he had managed to offend this time. But that was a question Leo himself couldn't answer. He just shook his head. Hard to say. He wasn't lying. The list of enemies he had made under the alias Mr. Zhou was getting quite long. Claire was both amused and annoyed. She tapped his nose with her finger. You, from now on, use Mr. Zhou's name less. Give him a break. You can switch to another alias. Leo rubbed his chin. Like who? Kevin Zhao? He's not very durable. How about your cousin Clark? The question earned him a pinch on the cheek from his girlfriend. Cousin Clark is a good guy, and we've only just gotten to know him. Don't bully him. She thought for a moment, then offered a suggestion. Use Wyatt the punching bag's name. We know him better. He's well-seasoned and durable. Leo's eyes lit up. Reasonable. That's my girl, so smart. Claire smiled and pointed her lips. Does being smart give me a reward? The next second, he pounced on her like a wolf. Of course. At least 2 rewards. While the couple was affectionately entwined on the friendship bed in the LNS house master bedroom, across town, at the police station, Rue and Zeke had rushed over. When they saw their subordinates in custody, they were stunned. These were burly men who were usually arrogant and formidable fighters. Now they were all bruised and swollen like pigs. They sat handcuffed in a corner, moaning in pain. Seeing Rue and Zeke, the leader, bolt, looked as if he had seen his family. He recounted the story, tears welling in his eyes. Young Master Rue, young Master Zeke. It's not that we didn't try. It's that Joe guy. He's too damn good. 1 guy against 6 of us. He used only 1 hand. 1 slap, 1 guy down. Another slap, another guy down. What Aragorn and Arwen? He's no damn Aragorn. He's Jason Bourne. The next day, Sunday, after spending most of yesterday at the Sterling family gathering and meeting so many people, Leo and Claire had more than fulfilled their social quota. They spent the morning enjoying some quiet time together at home. Leo was on cooking duty. Bertha Sue had eagerly volunteered to handle the fried eggs. As it was the only dish she was allowed to make, Leo felt reasonably confident in assigning her the task. He did, however, have to remind his girlfriend not to get too carried away. Eating more than 10 fried eggs for breakfast was a bit much, even for him. After breakfast, Claire went to the living room and stretched out comfortably on the sofa. She propped her long, slender legs up on the coffee table and began casually flipping through some Sterling Holdings financial reports. Leo headed to the study to work. Before he left, he glanced at his girlfriend on the sofa. Her legs, clad in black over-the-knee socks, were crossed at the ankles, swinging lazily. He glanced again, and again. What was I about to do? Oh, right, work. Get grip, Leo. A real man can't be so easily distracted by beauty. One more look. Just one last little peek. Reasonable. The parrot flapped out of the kitchen with a few cherries in its claws, delivering the fruit to its mistress on the sofa. As it passed its master, it shot him a disdainful look. Decadent king. Decadent king. Then it flew happily over to the sofa to present its offering. For the queen. Have some, queen. Claire casually took the cherries from her silly bird, popping one into her mouth. She glanced toward the study, a subtle smile playing on her lips as she saw her boyfriend peeking at her. She feigned a stretch, flexing her feet, making her legs look even longer and more striking. Thump! It sounded like a certain handsome fellow had just walked headfirst into the study door. Claire almost laughed out loud. Her mood brightened even more. The morning sun streamed into the LNS house, clear and bright. A classic at the singles slaughterhouse, the mistress teasing the master. It never got old. Leo sat down at the computer in the study. His brain was full of legs. He took a moment to compose himself before getting into work mode. He booted up the computer and opened a document to flesh out the design plan for Heavenly Tactics. Inspired, he even drafted a marketing plan for the game's launch. Any art design work could be handed off to the ever-oblivious Isabella Zhao later. Then he logged into AIM and chatted with his friend Potato. They discussed the battle through the Heavens browser game. Potato was having writer's block and asked for some ideas. Leo recalled the plot of the original novel from his past life and typed out a long, detailed outline. His friend on the other side of the screen, the future king of web novels, was stunned into silence for a full minute. When he finally replied, his message was full of exclamation points. Holy shit, Leo, you're a genius. The plot you came up with is exactly what I was thinking. It's even more complete than my version. How did you do that? At his screen, the reincarnated Leo typed back without a hint of blush. I guess it's just that great minds think alike. That's how it is with best friends. Potato had an epiphany. Reasonable. After discussing the novel's plot, Leo brought up the browser game's revenue and profit sharing. Potato wasn't too concerned about the extra income. Don't worry about it, Leo. As an author, just seeing my work adapted into such a great game is satisfying enough. It was true. For most authors, having their work adapted was a dream come true. The game was a huge success. Potato even joked that if he ever got to see Battle Through the Heavens as a comic, an animated series, or even a live-action show, he could die happy. Leo thought about the live-action adaptation from his past life, the one where they had infamously replaced the epic dragon with a CGI pony. He offered some friendly advice. Maybe not the live-action show. You might not be able to rest in peace. His chat with Potato did give him an idea. Now that he had more disposable income, he could consider buying the animation rights to Battle Through the Heavens. Only he, a reincarnate, knew the kind of popularity and immense profit the animated series would generate in the future. It was a good opportunity to get another great deal from Scrollverse. Besides, the art for Heavenly Tactics was mostly done. The remaining work was mainly for Wyatt's technical team. That meant a certain Isabella Zhao was starting to have some free time. That wouldn't do. The best way to show appreciation for a trusted and valued employee was to give them more responsibility. Tired? The dictionary of the Born to Work campus beauty definitely didn't contain the word tired. He had already thought a new task for Isabella Zhao. He decided he would deliver the good news to her in person tomorrow. With his plan set, his work for the day was done. Leo cheerfully left the study. In the living room, he saw his girlfriend on the sofa, texting someone. He sat down beside her. "Who are you chatting with?" Claire smiled and showed him her phone screen. "Annie Cakes. She just started a new internship at a perfume company called Aria Perfumes in their project planning department. She's exhausted and complaining to me about it." Leo raised an eyebrow. "Aria Perfumes? A nice name. Sounds much more sophisticated than Mako Entertainment." Claire laughed. "It is, but Annie Cakes doesn't think so. She's working overtime every day, and she says the feedback from above is driving her crazy. She told me she wants to punch the big boss in the face." Downtown, at the Mako Entertainment headquarters. In the tech department office, Wyatt Way sneezed and rubbed his nose, feeling a strange sense of unease, as if someone had just cursed him. He shook his head. It was probably just his imagination. He closed the project proposal from one of his family's perfume companies on his computer screen, having added a few comments. Then he leaned back in his chair to rest. On the screen, the name of the company from the proposal he had just closed was still visible. Aria Perfumes. As a new week began, the second annual Happiness Campus All-Stars contest kicked off with a bang. After the resounding success of the first event, the strategy was a no-brainer, decided upon in a Happy Nest internal meeting. If it works, do it again. Every year, universities across the country welcomed a new class of freshmen. Every class had its own new campus heartthrobs, and it girls waiting to be discovered. Each time the event ran, it successfully converted a fresh batch of college students into registered users, and in many cases, die-hard fans of the platform. It was the easiest money they had ever made, like manna from heaven. Rumor had it that the Quad had tried to shamelessly copy the idea, launching their own campus popularity contest. The result? Crickets. Happy Nest had already established itself as the gold standard. College students only recognized the legitimacy of their contest. They wouldn't spare a second glance for some knockoff event run by a second-rate platform. Besides, this contest came with rewards. Happy Nest had a stacked arsenal of popular games: Garden Grab, Friend Trader, the Name Compatibility Test, and Brainiac Blitz. And now, you could add the Battle Through the Heavens browser game to that list. They could throw together some in-game items and special privileges as prizes, which would in turn attract a whole new wave of gamers to participate, further boosting the event's popularity. And speaking of rewards, Isabella Zhao came bouncing back into the picture. Like a kitten catching the scent of catnip, she eagerly pounced. She had won first place in the East Bay region in the first contest, happily claiming the King-grade fertilizer as her prize. This was the second time around. Happy Nest, as the organizer, had upped the ante. The new grand prize was Emperor-grade fertilizer. This wasn't just fertilizer. It was a clueless girl trap. The moment she saw the prize list, Isabella Zhao's blood began to boil with excitement. "Oh, this event was made for me." She eagerly, enthusiastically, and proactively tried to sign up. And then, disaster struck. According to the rules, previous participants were not allowed to compete in consecutive years. Isabella was struck by lightning. Her world came crashing down. Unwilling to give up, she even called Happy Nest customer service line, practically sobbing into the phone. "Please, I really want the fertilizer. Just give me one more chance to compete." The customer service representative on the other end was completely baffled, almost convinced it was a prank call. The in-game items were just a bonus. The real prize was the officially recognized title and honor. Who in their right mind would compete just for a bag of fertilizer? The answer was someone was. Isabella's IQ wasn't exactly setting records on a normal day. But when it came to matters involving virtual fertilizer, her not-so-brilliant mind went into overdrive, running at 500% capacity. And she actually came up with a solution. She immediately turned to her adorable junior. Yvonne, This is an emergency. You have to help me with this, you just have to. After listening to Isabella's breathless, gesticulating explanation of the situation, Yvonne Moreau frowned slightly. A popularity contest? Then she shook her head. Not interested. The next second, Isabella was hugging her leg, looking up with teary eyes, and begging pitifully. Please, just participate. This is really, really important to me. If you help me win the fertilizer, I'll do anything. The competition is easy. With your looks, you can win the championship without even trying. If not, I'll help you campaign for votes. I'll even pay you $500. $500. The notoriously stingy Isabella was, for once, opening her wallet. Yvonne paused, then asked, how much does a bag of Emperor-grade fertilizer cost in the in-game store? Isabella held up 5 fingers, her voice filled with passion. $250, she declared. It's incredibly rare. Yvonne was silent. She turned to Wyatt Way, who was just passing by, and asked for a serious fact check. Is my math wrong, or is hers? Wyatt looked like a man who had seen it all before. It's her brain that's wrong. In the end, Yvonne agreed to Isabella's request. Of course, it was on the condition that Isabella thumped her chest, signed a written promise, and swore to work diligently for the next month. Even after paying such a steep price, Isabella was beaming as she signed the note. It's done. It's done. The Emperor-grade fertilizer is mine. Ha 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 hick. She was already popping the champagne. And, to be fair, she wasn't wrong. In the last contest, once Isabella had entered the fray and started posting selfies on her social media to rally votes, she had steamrolled the competition. It was like chopping vegetables, effortless slaughter. Whatever she lacked in intelligence was more than compensated for by her stunning looks. Winning the East Bay It Girl title had been a piece of cake. Well, okay, she did waste a little money on text message votes. And compared to the clueless Isabella, her junior, Yvonne Gibberish Girl Moreau was in no way inferior in terms of looks or presence. In fact, her cool, clean aura, which bore a striking resemblance to Claire Sterling's, was enough to slay the hearts of countless young men. In Isabella's own words, if you've got 3/10 of the boss's wife's presence, you can crush anyone. Little Yvonne here has 7/10. Forget winning the East Bay region. She could probably take the whole state. And indeed, that's how it played out. With Isabella enthusiastically directing the entire operation, all Yvonne had to do was pose for a few photos under her senior's command. Isabella then frantically uploaded them to Yvonne's Happy Nest account. Registration confirmed. The photo caption read, "Hope you'll vote for me." And then, within a single day, the Berkeley student body erupted. Yvonne's vote count skyrocketed, leaving everyone else in the Berkeley regional bracket in the dust. She tore through the ranks so decisively that it caught the attention of students from other universities in the East Bay area. They came to take a look and collectively gasped, "Holy shit, she's that beautiful. Last year's winner was from Berkeley, and this year's might be too. Isn't Berkeley supposed to be a top-tier academic institution? Since when did they start mass-producing goddesses?" Meanwhile, within Berkeley, a rumor quietly began to spread that the 2 consecutive Campus All-Stars winners were as close as sisters, practically inseparable. And now, they were even working part-time at the same company. This led the students of Berkeley to sigh with emotion yet again. It's true what they say. Beautiful girls are only friends with other beautiful girls. While students across the entire East Bay, and indeed the nation, were buzzing about the second Happiness Campus All-Stars contest, Leo Wallace seemed a world away, calmly playing a game of chess in a gazebo in the faculty housing area of Berkeley's old campus. He placed a black stone on the board. Across from him, Dr. Alastair Finch looked up at Leo, his tone casual. "There's a company. What's it called again?" "Mako Entertainment. That's yours too, isn't it, kid?" Although the old man was retired, officially holding only the title of President Emeritus, he seemed to have a leisurely life, spending his days in the small gazebo, sitting in a wicker chair, squinting in the sun, and playing chess. He was like a faded clay statue of a bodhisattva. In reality, he had long ago woven the entire university into a vast network. It was as if anything that happened on campus, a whisper on the athletic field, the rustle of exam papers in a professor's office, even a new litter of stray kittens near the campus wall. Not a single leaf could fall without him hearing it. Now that the old man had asked, Leo, sitting opposite him, didn't try to hide it. He nodded generously. "Yep, it's mine." He casually placed a white stone on the board. "Dr. Finch placed another black stone, then shot a sideways glance at Leo. "Quite the operator, aren't you? I hear that in the Happiness Campus All-Stars contest, both of Berkeley's winners from this year and last are working part-time for you." Leo nodded again. "That's right. Then he looked at Dr. Finch with a puzzled expression. You're getting on in years, old man. Didn't take you for a gossip. Dr. Finch nearly flipped the table in a rage. Isn't it because of the damn mess you've made? He struggled for a moment to maintain his scholarly composure, his lips still twitching. The rumors are flying all over both campuses. They're saying some company called Mako Entertainment is hiring talented students for part-time work, and that anyone who gets and has a chance to work side by side with Isabella Zhao and Yvonne Moreau, the two campus queens. The good-for-nothing idiots on campus are going absolutely ballistic, frantically asking how to apply. Some are even willing to work for free just to be near them. Leo looked surprised. Is that so? Well, isn't that? Wait, no, is that really happening? Dr. Finch gritted his teeth. Still playing dumb? I knew this was your handiwork the moment I heard it. Leo looked deeply wounded. Old man, is that really the kind of person you think I am? Dr. Finch hesitated. It wasn't you? Leo scratched his head. Oh, it was me. You're a good judge of character. The esteemed President Emeritus and National Academy member once again flew into a rage. Then what the hell were you just saying, you little bastard? Take this. He chased Leo around the gazebo with his cane. After a while, the old man and a young man sat back down at the chessboard. Leo poured tea for the old man with a smile. Calm down, calm down. I couldn't help it. Happy Nest is short on cash, and it's relying on Mako Entertainment's games to stay afloat. And we're desperate for talent in the gaming division. Where else would I look but my own alma mater? Dr. Finch took a sip of tea, his anger subsiding slightly. He looked at Leo. Recruit all you want, but you make sure their salaries and benefits are by the book. If any real talent joins you, you better take good care of them. I won't have them being taken advantage of. Leo smiled. I was just joking earlier. Don't worry. If real talent comes my way, I'd sell my own kidney to treat them like royalty. If he couldn't afford it, there was always Happy Nest. If Happy Nest couldn't afford it, well, there was always a certain third-generation heir of the Wei family. Dr. Finch nodded slightly, his expression softening. He looked at Leo again and spoke slowly. A businessman chases profit. He doesn't wake up early for nothing. I'm not asking you to be a saint. I just hope you don't lose yourself in the pursuit of money. Remember the path that brought you here. Mako Entertainment's games might bring you immense profits, but Happy Nest is a powerful tool. Don't neglect what's truly important. Those who wield great power should act with kindness and integrity. If your virtue doesn't match your position, you will eventually be crushed by its weight. Coming from a man born in the late 1930s, who had witnessed the nation's turbulent journey, these words were a treasure trove of experience and hopeful guidance. Leo's expression turned serious. He sat up straight and nodded respectfully. I'll remember that. Seeing Leo's attitude, Dr. Finch looked pleased and sighed. I'm 71 this year. In all my decades, I've seen so many prodigies, so many bright stars, but some always lose their way to greed, leaving only regret and sorrow. You, kid, are one of the few I've seen at your age who can walk with such a steady, grounded pace. While I'm still around, I want to see for myself just how far you can go. These were words straight from the heart, an undisguised expression of his high hopes and encouragement. Leo nodded, moved. Then he remembered something. You're 71 this year? Dr. Finch smiled freely. I am. What? You thought I was in my early 60s. I just take good care of myself. Leo scratched his head. Oh no, I thought you were at least 80. Dr. Finch's face fell. The esteemed President Emeritus and National Academy member once again flew into a rage, grabbing his cane and chasing him around the courtyard. You damn little bastard. Don't you run. Leo, nimble on his feet, dodged and asked, By the way, old man, what about that introduction to the senior alumnus you mentioned? What happened with that? Dr. Finch, still in hot pursuit, rolled his eyes. You think everyone's as idle as I am? The man's a very busy person. It's hard enough for him to find a spare moment. The earliest would be after the fall break. Just you wait. As the old man and the young man were engaged in their game of chase, their conversation continued unabated. Finally, Leo's youthful stamina won out. After hearing the news, he dashed away, leaving Dr. Finch to stop, panting for breath. He looked in the direction the little bastard had fled and couldn't help but smile. He turned his head slightly, as if speaking casually to someone behind him. Did you hear all that? What do you think of the kid? From behind a cluster of trees, next to the gazebo, a middle-aged man slowly emerged. He was about 50 years old, dressed in a simple suit. He had a warm smile, yet carried an air of innate authority. If anyone else had been present, they would have easily recognized him as the current president of Berkeley. Directly under the Department of Education, a deputy ministerial level administrator. Dr. Chen Wangdao. In response to Dr. Finch's question, the current president of Berkeley also gazed in the direction Leo had disappeared, smiling slightly as he spoke. The person you have such high hopes for, how could you be wrong? The CSO of Happy Nest, the owner of Mako Entertainment. To have accomplished so much before the age of 20 is remarkable, and it's even rarer that he still has such a pure heart. He's a good Samaritan, organized fundraisers for the winter storm, donated to the Southwest earthquake relief, built a disaster response channel. If you hadn't mentioned it, I would never have known Berkeley had produced such an extraordinary figure. Dr. Chen's voice was filled with admiration. Dr. Finch also smiled. Indeed, that's why I was tempted to break my own rule, to cash in what little face I have left and try to pave the way for this kid a little. It sounded like a humble statement, but only someone of Dr. Chen's caliber knew the true weight behind the old president's words. Dr. Chen was also a bit curious. You're going to introduce him to your contacts. Who do you plan on having him meet? Dr. Finch narrowed his eyes slightly, his tone light. For something like this, you might as well go straight to the top. He then casually mentioned a name. A name that was enough to make the deputy ministerial level president of Berkeley visibly startle and draw a sharp breath. It took him a long moment to recover. Dr. Chen sighed. That kid. He must have accumulated some serious karma in his past life to deserve such care from you. Dr. Finch chuckled at that, his face filled with satisfaction and pride. That kid. He has ability, he has persistence, and more importantly, he has integrity and character. And it's rare to find someone I get along with so well. A young man who has the patience to sit and play chess with an old coot like me. I bet he even saw me sneak 2 extra blackstones, but he didn't call me out on it. He knows how to let me win. So considerate. To be able to do that, that's truly rare. Before he could finish, Dr. Chen walked over to the chessboard in the gazebo. He glanced at the seat where Leo had been sitting. His expression changed to one of surprise. Dr. Finch, it seems the kid snuck some white stones of his own. Dr. Finch froze, whipping his head around. He saw Dr. Chen reach down and pick up several stones from Leo's former seat. He counted them and reported he hid 4 of them. Dr. Finch's face fell. The esteemed President Emeritus and National Academy member, for the 3rd time, flew into a rage. That damn little bastard. I'm going to get him for this. Daily request for boosts and gifts. By the way, bad news. Looks like based on the outline, this story won't be finished until summer break. Good news, I've got inspiration for the final gut punch before the ending. Escaping the gazebo, Leo strolled leisurely along the tree-lined path of the campus. He was in a pretty good mood. While playing chess with the old man, he had vaguely sensed someone eavesdropping from behind the trees. He figured it was part of the old man's plan. At first, he thought the person behind the trees was the senior alumnus Dr. Finch was going to introduce him to, but as he was leaving, he pretended to glance back casually and caught a glimpse of a profile. He recognized him. It was almost certainly the current president of Berkeley. If the introduction was to him, that would already be quite an honor. The president of a top-tier university, a deputy ministerial level figure. If nothing else, with his backing, Leo could truly walk through Berkeley like he owned the place. But the man never came out. Combined with what the old man had said, it seemed the person he was to be introduced to was someone else entirely. That conclusion was a little terrifying. What kind of senior alumnus could possibly be higher up than the deputy ministerial level president of Berkeley? Leo couldn't help but ponder this, racking his brain without reaching a conclusion. But the more he thought about it, the wider his grin became. Man, which powerhouse senior could it be? When I meet them, I'm going to latch onto them and never let go. By lunchtime, he was still thinking about it, grinning foolishly at the table. Claire Sterling, sitting across from him, looked at him with a puzzled expression, as if he were an idiot. What are you thinking about? Grinning like a fool. Leo subconsciously blurted out the truth. Latch onto them. Her eyebrows shot up instantly. Latch onto whose leg? What hussy had gotten her claws in her boyfriend this time? Leo snapped back to reality and saw the murderous intent brewing in his girlfriend's eyes. He quickly explained, No, I'm not talking about the kind of leg you're thinking of. Not a literal leg, an abstract, conceptual leg. It was getting messy. Finally, he swore a solemn oath. Whether it's literal or abstract, Leo Hammer Wallace is resolutely dedicated to latching onto the leg of comrade Bertha Sue, and Bertha Sue alone. Only then was Miss Sterling satisfied. She smiled sweetly and placed a chicken leg in her boyfriend's bowl as a reward. It was Tuesday. For once, the couple didn't have classes on the new campus. After their afternoon class meeting on the old campus, they were free. It was a perfect chance to enjoy some time together. They weren't in a rush to head back to the LNS house. The couple took a stroll around campus. As evening approached, after dinner, Claire got an idea and dragged Leo to the grand auditorium to watch a play by the Griffin Players. Lately, since joining Mako Entertainment, Yvonne Moreau had been fired up, busy with work at the company, especially with supervising a certain slacker, Isabella Zhao. As a result, she had less time to participate in plays. The Griffin Players were naturally missing one of their most stunning and brilliant lead actresses. Of course, the other actors' performances were still commendable. But as the students in the audience watched, applauding and cheering, they couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. We missed the golden age. Campus Queen Claire's cameo was a once-in-a-lifetime event. And now we can't even see the new Campus Queen Yvonne's performance either. Has her legendary earthquake-style line delivery, all trembling and vibrating, become a thing of the past. Leaving the auditorium, Leo casually mentioned to his girlfriend, "Hey, have you noticed something? It seems like everyone we know has a thing for quaking." Claire thought for a moment and nodded. "True." Leo rubbed his chin. "Even if they don't start out that way, they get influenced and start doing it too. The eye-twitching thing is like a contagious disease." He turned to his girlfriend and asked humbly, "Do you think it's our fault?" Claire shook her head without a second thought. "Of course not." Leo nodded. "I don't think so either." "Then whose fault is it?" The couple looked at each other and reached the same tacit conclusion. Mr. Zhou. Mr. Zhou started it all. He's the culprit. They looked at each other again and high-fived. Reasonable. It was still early. The couple, not in a hurry to get back, continued to wander around campus. It was late September. The summer heat was finally fading. The early autumn evening breeze was cool and gentle, carrying the faint scent of flowers, a refreshing and pleasant feeling. Leo and Claire walked side by side. They were like an old married couple by now, still holding hands on their strolls without it feeling cloying, just natural and intimate. Only the jealous single people would shout things like "get a room." It was hard not to chuckle. They chatted as they walked, and the topic turned to the upcoming week-long fall break. The friends from room 205 and room 520 had already discussed it in their group chat a couple of weeks ago. They were planning another group trip for the fall. Clear Creek Historic Town, the place they had missed on their spring outing, was on the list of options. They were ready to experience the charm of an old water town. An old town, poetic and picturesque. The girls were naturally drawn to the idea. Claire was no exception. Leo had no objections either. He was just happy to go wherever his girlfriend wanted to go. As long as it was convenient and safe, he was in. Last time, they went to Spirit Springs Mountain for their spring trip and ran into a flash flood and a mudslide. This time, they were going to Clear Creek Historic Town. Go ahead, let the town's little streams and bridges flood the entire place. He dared them. Even in a novel, an author wouldn't dare write something that ridiculous. If they did, they'd be getting hate mail for the rest of their life. After their evening walk, before heading back to their dorms, the couple received a call from Leo's parents, all the way back in Northwood. It was his mother, Susan Wallace, calling her son's phone. As soon as he picked up, he barely had time to say "Mom." The pleasantries lasted less than 3 sentences before Susan's powerful voice came through the phone. "All right, let me talk to my daughter." Her chat quota with her biological son was quickly used up. She immediately switched to a cheerful conversation with her precious daughter-in-law. First, she asked about all the little details of their daily life. Then, the conversation turned to the progress of the sweet return bakery back in Northwood. Susan was full of confidence and ambition, ready to expand her empire, discussing with her daughter-in-law once again the plan to open a branch in the East Bay. Claire, on her end, expressed her unwavering support. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law duo chatted animatedly, their spirits soaring. It was rare to see Miss Sterling like this, a side of her that only seemed to come out in front of her mother-in-law. With one hand on her phone and one foot propped on a rock by the path, she practically puffed out her chest, boldly declaring that with them united, the future of the East Bay's pastry scene belonged to Sweet Return. If any of the Sterling clan saw this, their jaws would probably hit the floor. Leo leaned casually against a nearby tree stump, watching the scene with a smile. The usually cool, commanding, and formidable future CEO of Sterling Holdings transformed in front of her mother-in-law. Such a close, harmonious relationship between a mother and daughter-in-law. Wasn't that every man's dream? The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law had a great chat, talking on the phone for a full 20 minutes. Finally, it was the turn of the father and son who had been waiting patiently. Worried about the cost of the long-distance call, Leo's father didn't say much, but he proudly shared a piece of good news with his son. "Don't think your mom's bakery is the only thing doing well. Your old dad isn't doing too bad either. The factory just landed a new contract from an international toy company, no less. The initial order is for 50,000 action figure molds. And if we do a good job, there will be a second and third batch. The factory finally had a big project, and it had revitalized Robert Wallace, the workshop supervisor. He didn't even go fishing by the Riverwalk anymore. Every day, he was full of energy and motivation, rushing to the factory first thing in the morning, happily busy. Leo was happy for his dad. A factory taking on a toy company contract. There was a lot of profit to be made in children's toys. But as happy as he was, the son didn't forget to try and get something for free. Hey, if you make any extras, save a couple for me, will you? He had no idea what he'd do with them, but when it came to freebies, not taking one felt like a loss.